Ready? Aim!
There's too many!
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby! Hello! It's another Monday, and I am back. Yes, immediately, camera, see? Camera knows I'm back, camera knows to immediately go fuzzy. It's another Monday, I am indeed back. And today is a good Monday. For those of you who haven't read the titles, for those of you who aren't sure of what on earth is going on in today's A Song of Ice and Fire world, we have seen some new units, which it's going to be since the Walrus Harpoon guys was the last one we saw, right? The Frozen Shore Hunters. Wow, Walrus Harpoon guys, what a great definition that is. A great word. Yeah, so Frozen Shore Hunters was the last thing we kind of saw. And alongside the Frozen Shore Hunters was the Cranham Bog Devils, which we've seen now. But we have now had information on the Lysene Pirates and the Brazen Beasts. More on both of those later on. I say later on, like a couple of minutes. Yeah, so that's the first thing. The second thing, we have had. Well, I'll cover this as the first major thing, really. Members of the community have received messages about the upcoming patch, and basically they're going to be doing a live stream. Not in the UK, but they are going to be doing a live stream. To say UK, I should say UK / Northern America. There is going to be a live stream, I believe, with CMON involvement and some community members. Regarding the new patch, now what information is going to be given to those community members ahead of the patch is beyond me. Certainly nothing that I'm involved with. And the level of kind of pre-warning or kind of like vetting they're going to do on those people involved in that chat, again, not something I'm involved with. I cannot comment on that. But it is indeed happening. Now, if anyone's wondering, how on earth do I know about this without being involved with it? It is our friend, our friends, I should say, across the pond in the Indonesian region who have been dealing with it. And I know that some people sent me messages. I actually received this from not just one player, but about 4 different people telling me this has happened, as well as a whole Discord server that is aware of it happening. So hopefully we'll find news about that in due course regarding that live stream when it's planned for and what that'll include. Now, the last information on that note about the patch is that it is late February, early March, which has changed a lot from when we had initial kind of reactions. Now, if that live stream happens at the end of February, which is kind of what things might look like, it might mean that, you know, the March time period will be when they release the patch. I can't imagine. Well, this is the problem, isn't it? This is CMON. Diving into the minds of CMON. If they do that hype video and then leave it more than 2 weeks before releasing the patch, I think they'll struggle. So yeah, that is a difficulty. Diving into chat, I'm super focused. I'm hopefully more focused now. Evan. Hunters and Cranham, yes, Hibiscus, those are the two. Congrats on the G job. Thank you, Carl. Thanks. It's yeah, that's been today's main thing for me, unfortunately. I have the patch. I'm holding it back. Get him. Yeah, I mean, you can try. I wish I had the patch. Seriously. I am the patch? No. There's no patching that I can possibly do on any relationships. And the patch is the friends that we made along the way. Isn't that true, Jameson? That is just so true. So yeah. Yeah, Marwin says start building your list for the patch. Always winter players. Yes. Potentially. Like, this is actually a thing. For the people attending Always Winter, there may be a new patch involved. It was something I kind of briefly talked about the other week. But yeah, Always Winter might be under the new patch. which is a big event in the UK. One of the events like GTs, one of the UK's GTs. Yeah, I mean, I'll be super hyped if that is new patch, but I mean, oh, it's gonna be a bit of work. Bit of work getting the site ready for it. Obviously not my work. Carlo putting the work in for that. But yeah, that will be a bit of a nightmare, especially if it drops like literally days before. So yeah, and then Hobbs cracks out the now infamous joke of Barras already have patch, and if this is not a joke that you are familiar with, then Hobbs is referring to this guy right here. I just scrolled straight past him. Patch, the face of the patch. There you go. Anyway, let's not do that. So, on the note of the kind of like the main thing I think people want to discuss today, which is the 2 new units and 2 new attachments that we've been shown, is first of all some information coming out of the US. Appreciate Evan for checking this one out for me, and that is on Asmodee's store. This is this Asmodee shop. I'll just scroll down so you can see the website there. On the Asmodee store, under March 17th, in the NA US Asmodee store, we see Brazen Beasts and Lysene Sellswords. So these are scheduled for release on the 17th of March in the US or NA region. I'm surprised I haven't seen anything on Spain, which probably means they haven't heard anything more about them. They haven't got any confirmed dates or anything like that. But if obviously if I hear anything or if I find anything out, I will share. So that's 17th for these Brazen Beasts and Lysene Sellswords. On that note, the Walrus and the Cranigman Bog Devils were seen at LVO, I believe. Not used, but were seen. They do exist. They are semi-nearly releasing. I don't really know. Whatever. Not something I have any more information on. I know that they have been seen though physically. So now his patch has ended. Oh dear, the chief. Oh dear. Already hilarious Lysene Mildex. Oh, Marwin, we'll get into that in due course. But yeah, maybe some fun stuff to be had. Right. So, if this is news to you, if you are not aware, if you haven't seen this last week, we had this revealed late on during the day, and this is 3 units, one of which you probably recognise. But the Lysene Sellswords, the Frozen Shore Hunters, and the Brazen Beast at the bottom there. I'll just scroll down so you can see the name. These were revealed, and yes, it is a classic blurry picture from a bedroom somewhere. Anyone who's been in the game for a while, has been following Tourney Ground for a while, and if you've ever seen Don't Fuck With Cats as well, a similar kind of thing, the zebra print rug and the zebra print pictures and things like that back in the day of older Song of Ice and Fire releases. Yes, we get a nice, what looks like to be mahogany-style table. So yes, Lysene, Sellswords, and Brazen Beasts are going to be the feature. Now, I've made cuts of these. They do have attachments, which I'm going to show people through in a bit as to what they look like and how they kind of come into it. But yeah, we're going to start with the fun one, right? Nathan says he saw painted Frozen Shore Hunters at Captain Con, and they performed okay enough mostly. All right, cool. People are using hunters and they performed decently. Yeah, it's kind of what you expect. Personally, I've had my comments on them. I'm not going to reiterate how I feel about them. But yeah, it's good to see people have got them, and if people are painting them up, even better. You know. Right, Lysene Sellswords. Let's make this a bit bigger for you guys at home. Right, so. Oh, interesting. Read that one out. So, Cine Mini in chat, have you heard about Harmer's Vanguards? Apparently a new free fruit unit. No pics out there yet, though. No, I haven't, Cine Mini. I'd love to know where you got that information from. If it's just some random person who mentioned them, obviously that's fine. But if it is actually the source and things like that that you've seen on any detailed event release sheets or anything, do get in contact, because that's the kind of stuff obviously that's full on awesome. All right, okay, so Lysene Sellswords, for those of you who can't read, 5 movement, 7/5/4 on a 3+ and a melee, 5+, 7+, cutthroat defensive stat line. They have pillage, the usual rules for pillage, melee attacks only, getting up to 2 tokens, usual thing, and Pirate's Blades, melee attack ability with precision, +1 attack die for each pillage token on this unit, and if you have 2 pillage tokens, it always rolls its highest attack die value. Now, I'm going to throw it out there and say that the Pirate's Blades things is doing 2 different things here, right? There was someone, and I know Carl in chat has said it needs to be, it already needs to be errated. Kind of, but no, it doesn't. Pirate's Blades, 2 pillage tokens means you use your highest attack die value. The separate rule, part bullet point of rolls +1 attack die for each pillage token on this unit, would apply for on this unit. 2 pillage tokens means 2 extra attack die, and also using highest attack die value. One of them is modifying the rank value that you use. One of them is simply adding a die to the pool. It's not actually modifying the rank you use. So Andrea says, not having Carlo to complain about new units is just not the same. We miss your complaints, Carlo. Oh, trust me, he'll get them in. Yeah, so how do I feel about these? Before I rant and rave, which I will do in due course, they're pretty good. These are a 5-point unit. This is, as I say, a cutthroat defensive and movement stat line. It is, the Pirate's Blade is kind of in keeping with the 5/6/4, I think, that cutthroats have mentally, I think, now, on 3+. Now, cutthroats get the vulnerable and the reroll if you're unactivated, and they come with vicious. Pirate's Blade with the precision, along with the +1 dice and the highest attack die. Let's start to evaluate, right? Precision is fine as a lonely keyword. A lot of units or factions already have ways to gain precision, but not everybody does. Well, strictly speaking, everybody does on their infantry, because the existence of 5-point NCU Jaqen with his base ability of giving infantry precision. But Greyjoys have precision in the base deck to some extent. Starks have precision through Karstark Loyalists, for example, and the likes of Syrio Forel and things like that. So on the most part, precision is a keyword where you're kind of like, meh, like you're not taken aback by precision. You don't honestly care that much. If Garlo was here, he would say the same thing as I would, which is, of all the things in the game, precision is, generally speaking, the worst keyword. And that's not to say that it's absolutely trashed here. It's just, generally speaking, the worst. Now, I'm glad they have precision, right? I'm glad they have precision, because if they didn't have precision and they had something like, I don't know, vicious, then these guys would probably be nutso. And in some ways, I think this is the kind of thing that's good. This is a move in the, I'm going to say, the right direction, the semi-right direction. One of the things we saw was damage cap basically cap out at 7, maybe 8 dice across the board. There's one unit with 8 dice, if off the top of my head, which is our friends Unsullied Swordmasters at 7. I don't think I've seen anything at 8 off the back of that. I'm trying to think if there is anything. Of course, Watch Captain inside stuff, and with extra dice and stuff. The whole Night's Watch package has ways of getting to 8-9 dice. Targs have ways of getting to 8-9 dice with, it's more like 8 dice, 9 dice if you really care, with attached cards again as well. But on the oh yeah, Gypsy's right. 9 dice. Cave dwellers do technically can get to 9 on their lowest ranks, as can uh, Stark Berserkers. But nobody cares about those two things. Cave dwellers are terrible, and Stark Berserkers are pretty sad at the moment, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, precision on the most part, fine. But the extra dice is the big thing. Now, the real killer here is the max dice, though. The extra dice is good. The extra dice is very good. Especially when we consider, units that want to potentially burst other units, or anything that wants to get through anything in the game, which has got a lot of wounds but not necessarily good armor and things like that. And people say, "Oh, but the precision helps against armor." Yeah, it does, but let's face it, you're not rolling that many sixes, right? That's just not how precision really works. And if it does, then great, whoopee. Go and add Dario 1 point attachment to literally every list you play. You'll have a great time. So, if we assume that precision's not that great, as I say, generally speaking, the worst ability keyword you can get. These other things start to really play into what is strong with the unit, and kind of where the unit starts to question life. Mikkel says you can get to, well, yeah. So, these guys have pillage. Pillage is not really a rule outside of Greyjoy. So let's talk about these guys outside of Greyjoy. Are these good? Yeah, I think they're fine. I think they are fine outside of Greyjoys. I think that for 5 points, you've got a unit that's like Cutthroats in a lot of ways, but it doesn't have the vicious keyword to kind of double down on low morale. It does have ways of doubling down on increased damage through the extra dice, though. What this does do, though, is this gets a lot better at killing stuff that dies relatively easy. So, I'm thinking Free Folk Raiders. I'm thinking Free Folk Trappers. I'm thinking a lot of these things, right? Poor fellows. These guys can reasonably clear a rank with their first attack, let's assume they're on full ranks for this. Of course, Free Folk have ways in terms of trappers, in terms of range attacks, just hidden traps. They'll get them down to potentially only 1 or 2 ranks where they're hitting the 5 dice in that initial attack. Completely removes the kind of danger of that initial attack, and that's where I think the Sellswords really struggle. But yeah, if they're allowed to get an Alpha Strike off, then it will hurt. And they will continue to hurt. This is basically, outside of Lance Cavalry, this is basically one of the best things I can see in the game that you want to end a round on. If you can end the round on a Lysene Sellsword charge into opening the round with a Swords Lysene Sellsword attack, you could be talking about 7 dice with rerolls with precision charge into potentially an 8 dice with precision, no rerolls. But if you've got any card play or anything on top, this is where these dice start to get a bit nuts. And this is where, the pillage alone, the pillage mechanic alone is not good, right? We understand pillage isn't good. If you didn't know that, go and check out a couple of weeks back when me and Mikkel talked about pillage. But it's going to see, I think, a big difference when we see it cleaving through lower, weaker, I should say, units. And this is the big difference for me. I can very quickly see this hitting 8, 9 dice. If it's getting that last activation charge off, that second attack is going to be with even just 1 more rank, is like 1 more dice is fine. If you have any card play to synergize that, especially if we're talking about rerolls in combat, there is really good chance that you can just start going ham with this. And if it gets the double tokens, and this is where the crux comes, if it gets the double tokens before it's taken significant damage, the chances are is that whatever attacks it back, you know, you don't typically kill a unit of cutthroats in one attack, but you're very unlikely to kill these guys in one attack. 2 attacks is not unlikely back to back, but in the situation we're talking about with the last turn, first turn, where this starts to really double down is when this gets 2 tokens, you don't stop it. You know, it just keeps coming at you. It's going to have 1 guy in it, which could be an attachment, it could be a commander attachment, and it's still rolling 9 dice. And it's still going to come at you, and it's still going to make a mess of your face. This is going to be quite dangerous for some factions. Now, let's talk about it in Greyjoy. Greyjoy have the ability to set up the pillage with the archers. They can double down with it. This is, like, on the most part, this is better than Reavers, to put it bluntly. The only thing holding this back from Reavers is that Reavers have the fact that they are Greyjoy, the fact that they are Greyjoy affiliated, they are a Greyjoy unit, does mean the base deck has a little bit more to play with them. Let's just go and remind ourselves. Greyjoy base deck. We have got things like Raiding Call. Raiding Call, which allows you to move units and move models around. It has to be friendly Greyjoy units. Is the only real, I mean, that's the only real base effect there that you really care about too much. So you can't just miraculously heal these guys in the same way as you could other factions or other units in the Greyjoy army, but apart from that, you really don't care. Yes, however, Abiscius does mention the other one, which I was going to point out in a second, is that you don't get the Blind Baron protection that Reavers could afford. But the truth is that people weren't putting Blind Baron on Reavers anyway most of the time. Most of the time they're putting it on the Asher Trapper unit as the tank of the list. So realistically, I do agree with Mikhail's initial kind of like statement around them being premium Reavers. I do believe that these guys are almost categorically better than Greyjoy Reavers, and I think that on the most part that Reavers are going to disappear from play if they ever did see play at a competitive level. I think these guys are just objectively better. They still synergize with all the other methods of gaining pillage tokens. There's a couple of little cards here and there that they don't synergize very well with from commanders. And yes, people have already started thinking with portals, and that's what I call thinking with our good friend Dagmar. Dagmar, who brings coordination tactics. Coordination tactics, you can coordinate pirates' blades, and this can suddenly make a lot of units hit with 9 dice on max ranks. You could be on 1 health again. Could hit with 9 dice with precision, and then any of their own keywords like crit blow, anything like that. We also have Lost for Glory from Dagmar, giving the +2 pillage token, and I believe +1 to hit, but losing it. Is it losing an armor, I believe? I can't remember what it is now. I should know it because Dagmar's one of my favourite ones. Yeah, losing 1 on the defense die roll. So this again, you know, Lust for Glory, stick that down on the unit, bang, straight in with 9 dice. Don't care about saving on 6s. Don't even care if you take wounds going in. Run over stakes, don't give a toss. I am going to charge you, and as long as I have that card, I am going to straight up kill you. Evan also says it ironically makes Reavers better. Yeah, it does. It makes Reavers better because you can coordination tactics Reavers to hit with 9 dice on 2s, which is pretty ridiculous. Yeah, that's pretty silly. But yeah, you in my opinion, I don't think the coordination tactics plays really, like, it's nice and all, it's cute. I think with coordination tactics all the time, right? I do think that Dagmar is going to see a bit of rise in popularity. I don't necessarily think he's going to see an increased play rate, but I do think Dagmar is going to have success with this unit in particular. I do think there are other things we need to consider though, and believe it or not, I am looking at something like Starks. Now, there is too much of a good thing. There is so much as too much of a good thing. But one of the few things that the pirates can synergize quite well with is the Stark deck. Specifically, I am looking at something like someone we already see a lot. This guy, right? I think it's not going to be that uncommon to see Great John in Pirates. You don't care about nearly any of the downsides of the Pirates because you're already seeing Great John being running Cutthroats a lot of the time. And those are the downsides. And people say, well, the other downside is you don't have Vicious. Sure, but like one of the few things the base Stark deck has gives Sundering, gives Vicious. So the precision keyword, while you can get it in other methods in Starks, actually, like, you're not doubling down. There is not a single double down on anything you have here. So I think, yes. Evan also says Berserker Tactics is literally +4 wounds, you gain a pillage. And this is exactly my point. Against infantry units, you can charge with the Great John. You use your D3 to make it an auto 6, so you auto charge 11. You are removing 3 of your own wounds, so 4 of your enemy. So you've already got a pillage token. You're then rolling, bearing in mind that that would kick in before. The pillage will kick in after, so you don't get them before. So you're only rolling the 7 dice on 3s. If you've got either of the 2 cards giving precision, Vicious or Sundering, you're really looking for the Vicious keyword here. That's what you're looking for from this unit. And that's 4 wounds, 7 more hits potentially coming through. Obviously 7 dice rerolls on the charge. Potentially with Vicious as well. You're probably not going to kill him. But I actually think you can aggressively try and reroll for 6s for the precision. With the intent, and this is the thing, the intent of doing as much damage as you can. Now, if you're able to do this with Aria setup for a last activation charge, I actually think you can already run a 9 activation list in Starks with the right setups. I think you can basically kill anything in the game. And all it really requires is literally all it requires is Berserker Tactics. That is literally it. Now, we've said that before so many times, but the significant difference here is that you can do that, and then you open with swords next round, and it's a high chance with, potentially rolling 8 dice, 9 dice. Yeah, you might lose a rank, right? You might lose a rank when you first come in, and you might only gain 1 pillage back, right? So you're only now hitting with 6 dice, right? This might genuinely make messes of things. Obviously suffers to things like cavalry. You don't get the automatic things. You don't automatically get to see it smash into and kill stuff. But then it basically says, I really want to see what that Elden meta list is like. Oh yeah, we'll come on to that in a minute. Brilliant, another neutral unit trying to up bad factions as of fixing the factions. Yep, that is that problem. But yeah, this is how I'm feeling about it at the moment. I do feel my initial reaction was like, oh, Greyjoys can use this, and they can. They can. There's some pretty dumb stuff with Greyjoys, in case you hadn't seen already. But I think a Great John unit that is basically just loading up on auto wounds makes even like Champions of the Stag all of a sudden are like, holy shit, we could just lose a rank to this Lysene Pirate charge because we didn't get to roll an armor save. So even there, you could already do almost the same thing with Great John Cutthroats. Yes, 100% you could, Jesse. 100%. The difference is with Great John Cutthroats is he didn't roll significantly more dice for getting through things like giants. You could try and get things like auto wounds through giants and things like that. That exists. But Cutthroats suffered a lot more into things like Champions of the Stag. They suffered a lot more into a lot of those other types of units, the higher armor, because they couldn't push through damage easily. I do think that you can push through damage a lot more because you don't actually require. You can aggressively reroll for the 6s, even though precision is worse. And it's not. And this is the thing. It isn't that Great John couldn't do it with cutthroats, but specifically you no longer require cat for exactly the same mechanics, and you can do it all with Arya. And this Arya and Lyanna, sorry. This was actually my point. Before, if you wanted that second attack to do anything big, if you ate something like a final strike or anything like that, your cutthroats are sat there and they're rolling like what? 4 dice, 6 dice, medis. But this time you just go, sod it, I'm just going to roll the same thing, but I'll do it with Arya. I'll give them the +1 morale. If I've lost a unit, I'm now giving them crit blow. That's infinitely better than Cat's ability of just max attack dice. But yeah, I think it's amazing? No, I don't think it's amazing, but I do think that's where we're going to see play the most, and that's because I think that they can do the same role that Cutthroats are doing, but better. Cutthroats are quite good at getting through kind of like low armor units, low defensive units, but they're not good enough. Simply, they just want to roll more dice. And this is where things start to get silly, because you can get them rolling more dice. I'm not going to sit here and say that Night's Watch are going to want to run captains in these guys. I don't think that's true. But there's a 10 dice attack if you ever need it when you're on 1 health. God, if you ever need Night's Watch healing, you don't need it with that unit. But yeah, it's something like that that needs to be considered. And then you also have Baelor, going back to Greyjoys, and this unit doesn't give a toss if it's walking around on like 2 health, 3 health. The Hardened helps protect it a little bit. Yeah, sure, it's not Greyjoy, that does suck a little bit. But then you get Black Tide Resentment, and for each missing dice you get +1 to hit and +1 dice. So you could be on your minimum dice, or minimum rank of 4 dice, and then go, but I've got 2 pillage, so now back to 7. And 2 pillage also sets me to 9, and then I also get a 10th dice for and an 11th dice for Black Tide Resentment. So I'm now 11 dice hitting on 2s with Vicious and +2 wounds on a Vicious Panic test. And I'm hardened and have to the last. And if I ever need to fail a morale test, I can just Black Tide Conviction, because I get +3 if I need it randomly out of nowhere. No, it's +1. No, it is it's +2 out of nowhere randomly if I ever need it. But 11 dice on 2s. That sounds pleasant, doesn't it? Hitting on a 1+ technically, yeah. But it does actually matter hitting on a 1+, because stuff like -1 to hit is not there. And Evan says it's a 5-point unit, and this is where I'm like, I'm all happy, right? This is where I'm all happy. This is a 5-point unit that can achieve this. And okay, there's some tactics card play in there, and we talked about some synergies and stuff, but this 5-point unit is cutting down things. Now, this is where my hate starts to come in. This is exactly the kind of design and the kind of thing, and I'm not saying the pillage token mechanic, I am not saying the pillage gives these dice or anything like this. This is exactly the kind of mechanic that needs to exist in 6, 7, 8, 9 pointers, call it. Right? I think it is goddamn ridiculous that this unit is still, like, I don't think it's that good. That's actually the thing. I don't actually think it's that good. It has some nice synergies. The chance of these come off is not amazing. Anything like that, right? But the point is, this kind of mechanic and this kind of good unit, kind of like synergy, the things you're looking to achieve with it, and what I would consider, if it wasn't pillage, if it was a slightly different mechanic, you could easily see this on a 7 or 8 point unit, like Lannister, Cassie Rock Honor Guard. And this unit, in terms of design, would be good. This is the thing. You want those 7 and 8 point units to just look at a 4 point unit and go, slap, you're dead. Like, that's what you want. You really want that. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Sellswords can achieve that alone. They can't, right? Their output compared to Cutthroats is basically the same if they've got the 2 Pillage tokens, right? But the point is that the design is in the right space to allow these 6 and 7 point units just to slap all over 4 pointers, which at the moment they're not doing. If your best solution for a 4 pointer is something like this is also your best solution for a 5 pointer, and your best solution for a 6 pointer, and probably still your best solution for a 7 pointer. And in the case of things like Champions of the Stag, this is kind of like verging on one of your best solutions for an 8 pointer in Great John. What? Like, what the fuck? Like, this is the problem, right? This is the curve really coming to shine as to why their problems are what they are. Yeah, this is a good unit. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's bad. I don't think it's that good. I don't expect it to dominate the game and be oppressive and really. I don't think it's going to do anything with neutrals, really. Although it is funny, if you ever get the pillage tokens up on neutrals with something like a Ramsey in it, you can walk around and then just go, I'm going to charge you, I'll panic you with Theon or whatever. Slap Reek. I don't care if he dies. I'm fine. I've got my 2 pillage tokens, and then I'll charge you, and I'm rolling, yeah, that's right, 9 dice on 3s with precision, and I get +3 automatic hits because I control letters and I'm a commander unit. With so that is potentially 12 hits, just straight up. 12 hits. Nice. 12 hits. Great. So yeah, I guess 5 point units. Okay, with a bit of investment, like 1 card investment. Very good card, to be fair. It's just a lot of input, and I think that 5 point units shouldn't be looking at this kind of thing. And that's not to say 5 point units shouldn't be beating 4 point units. I am massively in favor of 5 point units beating 4 point units. I'm big on that. I think that's important because I want to see the end of Free Folk Horde more so than anybody as a Free Folk player. I'm bored of playing it, but I don't think this solves that problem because precision is the best keyword against the higher armor targets, which you're talking 6 and 7 and 8 pointers. I don't know. I feel like this design is the worst keyword, precision. I'll reiterate that. But like, I feel like this design is nice, but I really feel like this is just going to exacerbate an existing issue where just running cheaper units is better because more expensive units, you're still capped at 12 wounds. And now we talk about effective wound count, and I do think effective wound count is important. Champions of the Stag, for example, have a much higher effective wound count than something like Poor Fellows. But it still has this opportunity to blow things up. Do I think these are good? As I say, nah, they're not amazing. They are decent. I think they'll see play. They are just about competitively viable for Greyjoy, definitely. Do I think they're going to blow the meta up and kind of completely change the rankings? No, not at all. I think he gives Starks a bit of a new tech piece for the Great John list, which is already a very good list. It makes it marginally better. I think a 9 Greyjoy list is. I'm surprised more people aren't going for the 9 Greyjoy lists yet. Sorry, a 9 Stark list. Me and Jacob both swear by them, but I think a 9 Stark list with these guys in it could be quite interesting. But what this does do, and this is where I kind of get a little bit frustrated, is this does move yet again with the precision and the extra dice rolls. It moves us into these kind of like high armor targets just being, or these low wound but high like hit targets like giants, Mother of Dragons with the dragon protection that she can bring out. It just makes them a little bit less viable. Now, I'm not suggesting here for any stretch that they were particularly viable to start with. Giants, on the most part, are mediocre. They're fine, but they're mediocre, especially when compared to other free folk kit. Mag is okay, 1/1's okay. Dragons are okay, not great with Mother of Dragons, to be honest. But like, yeah, I just see this unit as kind of like it pushes out a lot of those things, unfortunately, further than them being like they're already just okay. And yeah, that doesn't mean I don't think you'll see a lot of these. I don't think it makes a massive impact on the meta at all. But I do think they have some nice synergies. And there we get to the crux of the problem, or the crux of the matter, is that I don't think these guys will be changed in the new patch. And if they're not changed, as you say that they did it last time with Queensmen and Lightbringers, literally released seconds before the patch came out. Maybe these guys will see a change, but like for 5 points, I'm disappointed in this ability for 5. But if this had been a 6-point unit, I'd have gone as a bit shit. And that's the problem. I like the ability. I want the ability perhaps not locked behind pillage at a higher level. I don't want this ability on a 5-point unit like this, unfortunately. Yeah. So Evan says one thing. The design for 5-point units works because they just make them do one thing. Yes, 5-point units do one thing and they do it mediocre to well, and everything else is a weakness. 7-point units are given a smattering of stuff and they rarely do one thing 40% better. Yeah, they do things the same level of better that a 5-point unit does usually. And then you get things like Ranger Hunters, which do a lot of extra dice rolling, and that's why they're good. The double attack is simply why they're good. If they didn't have a double attack, they would be a lot worse. And the fact that it synergizes, the Watch Captain synergizing with both sides of that attack makes a significant difference. Queen's Men stand there and grind forever. Yep, another 7-point unit that just kind of doesn't die, and that's his job. It doesn't do any damage, it just doesn't die. And yeah, Fabian says, as a Greyjoy player, sadly jump on them because it will give the opportunity to get the hold of things. Yep. I do think it's an effective unit for Greyjoys. I do expect to see quite a lot of this over Reavers and Greyjoys. Yeah. Carl says, just neutralizing it. But this is the thing, like, Free Folk need to not be the best. Like, I'm of the opinion that Free Folk very much needs to be in the bottom half, if not the worst faction next patch. Because I think that a lot of people complaining that activation advantage and everything matters. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We will see. Anyway, that's them. They get a Mickey thumbs up. We'll definitely see play. Don't actually know if they're gonna make it competitively, like importantly, but they're definitely gonna see play, and I expect to see some hilarious combos with them. And then we see their attachment. For 1 point, we see the Lysene Bosun. Lysene Bosun, and he comes with 2 abilities. Now, Domineering Pride is one of them, which, if those of you who can't remember, this is an ability that you've probably literally never seen before, because honestly, this unit basically never gets played, like, at all. And it's the Landsport City Watch. It's the, when engaged by an enemy with fewer remaining ranks, this unit automatically passes all panic tests. There you go. There's an ability that some people watch this show who literally see us all the time, probably didn't even know existed. So, it comes with that, and Interrogate. Each time this unit destroys an enemy with a melee attack, you may look at your opponent's hand of tactics cards and discard 1 card. I don't know. Maybe. The Domineering Pride, for those of you who don't perhaps think about it, it does work well against, say, guess what, giants and chariots and dragons and things like that, because it only counts things you're engaged with. So if you get charged by any of these things and it doesn't do enough hits to kill you or take you down to your last rank, you will just automatically pass your panic test. Even if something else charges you and you're engaged with a 1-rank unit, like a solo, you will still pass your panic test because you still have, while engaged by an enemy with fewer remaining ranks, you are still satisfying that condition. So Domineering Pride is not a bad ability on its own. It's fine. The difference is that's just generally speaking not what happens. You get attacked, you drop a couple of ranks, and you go, oh, now I'm lower than my opponent, and now I'm going to have to take morale checks, and then rip. Interrogate, I simply think just won't happen that often in a game. Maybe happen once, right? Each time this unit destroys an enemy with a melee attack, You may look at your opponent's hand of tactics cards and discard 1 card. Now, Imperial Randall is very correct, and he says very situational ability. Can't rely on it ever happening, so Dominating Pride really has to be the reason you take this guy. Yes. Interrogate is not going to happen often. Is it good? Yeah. Yeah, this is actually okay. It's not the discarding of a card, although that is nice. It's not the discarding of the card. It is seeing your opponent's hand. You can handlock them for a turn by taking like Baelish onto letters, which is a very neutral thing to do. Take the swords, get an attack in, kill something, look at their hand. They can't draw extra cards very easily. There will be some stuff that can. And then, you know, discard one of the better cards in the hand, but more importantly, you need to know what information's there. Do I think this is that good? I don't think it's amazing, but it's okay for a point. The problem is that this isn't going to happen very often because you're spending a point on an attachment. And that attachment doesn't do a huge amount actively. It's a very kind of like inactive attachment. It's not something that's easy to activate and get going. Domineering Pride wants you to be on a kind of like hit defensive unit, so you're not going to lose wounds to hits very easily. So you keep your morale buff, so something like Iron Makers would actually be a very good shot for a Lysene Bosun. But the Interrogate wants you to be on an aggressive unit that can go and take hits and do damage, which again is something like an Iron Maker unit. I don't know where I would put them, but I think Iron Makers for me are the best opportunity. A unit with poor morale but good armor, lowering the hit count, but not having to worry as much about the morale count. Yeah, attach the Stormcrow Merc Suicide Squad in Targs, then use Miriam Mazda to add the Bosun to every other infantry unit in the army. Very jank, very much unlike to work, but crazy if it does. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the Targ meme list, as Gypsy says there, it is exactly what it is. It is a bit of a meme, the Miriam Mazda thing, and it's funny, but like really, the reason that list works is Drogo ended up going and killing something, usually first, or you run it in a non-Drogo list and you're just hoping they kill your Bosun unit, which they're probably just not going to do. Yeah, just not the kind of jank that I like. Abyscius, is it 1 or 2 points? It's 1. It is 1 point, Abyscius. Evan certainly punishes chord lists or anything running soft stuff. Yeah, it is gonna kind of like rub through chaff. It's gonna punish chaff lists. I am not convinced it's going to see a lot of play. I think people will run this. I think people will run this in Lannisters. I will leave the silence to deafen people there. Yes, that is my distaste for that answer. No, don't do that. Don't do that, please. No. I think people will run this in Greyjoys. Maybe Iron Makers. Okay. Maybe you might buy me something there if you've got the point. I don't think they've got the point, but maybe. You might put this in neutral lists because it's neutrals. Well, you can put whatever you want in neutral lists. If it's not Ramsey or Roos running basically a very set lot of stuff, you're probably not going to have a good time anyway. I'm not overly sold this. Yeah, I think Carl sums up there. It's going to see a lot of play, but it's probably under 50% win rate. Yeah, I don't think this is the annoying thing. This can win games. Mikhail is completely right. The card discard will 100% win you games in some cases, and it will allow you to see a hand, and that is just as impactful as getting the discard. That being said, I simply don't think the Interrogate's going to come off that often unless we see some particular combo arise with it. Now, there's no combos off the top of my head where I can see the Interrogate being really pushed unless people just start YOLOing this guy into Bolton Bastard Girls and start going ham with an 8-point unit Bolton Bastard Girls, killing things and interrogating all the people that they kill. And you know what? That at least would be somewhat thematic. Yeah, sure, we could change Lysene Bosun's a bad name for this thematic piece, but Bolton Bastard Girls with Domineering, Pride, and Interrogate, that actually feels somewhat actually thematic as two abilities, so I'm happy with that. Marvin says, Lannister Bosun, you've sold me. Good. You'll find Marwyn at the bottom of the rankings for a reason. Gypsy, I can see this going to Martell, having on the panic side. Maybe that's a thing. I'm not convinced though, because Martells simply don't get engaged that much. It's actually the best way to beat Martells is not get engaged. So Domineering Pride doesn't do anything if you're not engaged. Yeah, so that's actually the point. Basically says you can go in Iron Makers or you can put Asher in them. Yeah, but you could have an Iron Maker with Asher and then 2 Iron Makers with Lysene Bosuns next to Asher. Nah. Now what do you do? Now you interrogate all the people that Asher and her 21 points. No, 23 points of Iron Makers butcher. What can you purchase the rest of this? You get Blind Baron and 2 Fortwell Wendy and Baelish. That's the 13 and 23 is your 36, which gives you 4-point unit of bowmen to back them up. There you go. 7 activation list for anybody who actually cares. Absolute YOLO. Lannister Guardsmen or Mountains Men? Ilya. You've got 2 problems there. One of them starts with mountains, and the other one says Lannister Guardsmen killing anything. Yeah, I don't believe that any of those 2 things will ever happen. So, not with a melee attack anyway, which is what Interrogate's requirement is. Maybe you can run Domineering Pride just on the Guardsman because you didn't lose 4 wounds, and then you go, haha! Now I have. Oh, you don't even have fewer remaining ranks. It just doesn't help you. If a cav charge isn't removing a rank from you, even a defensive unit, if a cav charge, like Lance Cav or anything like that, is not removing a rank from you, like, they didn't set the charge up right, they're having a bad day, or they're charging with a unit they should just never have charged a Lysene Bosun, in which case, yeah, you deserve to win the game. The attachment that launched 1,000 terrible, well-intentioned lists. Yes. Look, I like the abilities. I think it's going to be cool to see it. I think that people have probably overhoped it. Sworn Shields, Tenacity meme. Yeah, you could do Sworn Shields. This is the thing, like, the Domineering Pride can work really well in anything with, like, Shield Wall and stuff. But the problem is that, like, the best way to kill these units, anyway, has always been to engage them with something that's, like, oppressively good at dealing damage anyway. It's just going to deal so many hits to you that it'll get through the shield wall, dropping you a rank, making you fail, making you then not have to worry about this mechanic. While also being shooting them, and shooting them doesn't require you to be engaged, meaning Domineering Pride does nothing. Yeah. Yeah, if Domineering was equal or less ranks, then we'd be talking 100%. It would mean it's impossible for solos to ever force through a panic check on a Lysene Bosun unit, which makes you protected against wolves, protected against giants, protected against dragons, protected against basically everything. And at that point, we'd be like, whoa, okay, for 1 point, this is pretty nuts. Yeah. Go against free folk in general? Yeah, kind of. Again, the problem is here is that's just not how I kill you. Like, that's just not how I kill you. Right. Yeah, Chariots and Varame protected from Panic Test then, but I'm not going to kill you with Panic Test on those units. I'm going to kill you in different ways. Like, this is the thing people forget. I know where this unit is on the board. I know what rules it has. You don't just get to randomly go, and by the way, my Lysene Bosun was there all along! Ha ha ha! No, I'm like, right, so I can't kill that unit with Panic Test on these units. Oh, so I just won't. Cool. Has he got Lysene Bosun and everything? No? Cool, I'll just go kill the other stuff then. Like, that's the... Like, we talk about deployment the other week and talk about terrain today, but like, it's a telegraphed thing that you're going to want to do. And if you're spending points on attachments, usually speaking, you have a shorter list. And if you have a shorter list, you don't get to pick those matchups as easily. And if you don't get to pick matchups as easily, I'm simply not going to have to worry about this keyword and this rule. Like, this is what people forget a lot of the time. When they're theory crafting a lot of these things, they aren't thinking that that's the way that they want the game to play out. It's similar to the GCS captain. Yeah, exactly. It works best if it's everywhere because you can't. It's too easy to navigate otherwise. So what if you're saying put a boast in every unit? Yeah, Marwin, you put a boast in every unit, especially playing Lannisters. You'll love it. No, that's a lie. Don't take anything I say seriously. If you do take anything I say seriously and you lose, that's your fault, not mine, because I lie all the time. Bosons are amazing. Play Bosons in everything. Don't play Bosons. Bosons are crap. Don't play Bosons in anything. Now you're confused. Right. Post, it's a funny, unique attachment that isn't terribly overcast and might be used in some niche matchups. Yeah, exactly, Post. And actually, this is the thing. For 1 point, what I like about this for 1 point is it's made people go, I might run that. And a 1 point attachment that makes people go, I might run that is fine. Absolutely fine. It might seem some niche play. It might get some good lists. It might see some good things come out of it. We're still requiring infantry units to do a lot of killing, which again just doesn't happen. That's not how the game really works at the moment. But again, if we're talking about infantry units doing a lot of killing, you probably know exactly what faction I'm going to suggest to you guys. The only faction where infantry units do a lot of killing with melee attacks. Hey, it's Starks! It's Starks! And just remind me, how Starks doing again? Oh yeah. Not great. Not great. And they're not as bad as they were. So, yeah. I suppose you could try it, Martel. Martel Sunspear Skirms. Sunspear Royal Guard to make them 8 points. That might be pretty meme. I think there's a point. There is actually a point spare in the other list. So, lol. Enjoy that one. And yeah, it isn't reliable. They're going to be massively impactful. And that's the thing. There are going to be games, and this is the problem with stuff like this, is that there'll be games where you remember it, and you're like, it was super impactful for that reason, and you go, yeah, but how many games was it not? And then how many games did you win versus how many did you lose? And how many were won because of the ability versus how many were not impacted by the ability? If the ability wasn't impactful most of the time, and you were losing or winning games, but losing games in particular, then the ability could probably be replaced for something where it could be impactful more often and rose your win rate. That's the thing. That's actually the thing. It isn't spare, it goes to Spear and Skirms. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's a good shout. Check it sounds like a future tactics card. Yes. Yeah, that is actually the big takeaway, is that this could easily be a tactics card. Killer rank or killer minimum unit, get this thing. It's not a great tactics card if it is, because let's face it again, like stuff does die, but not that stuff dies. But if it's different if you just kill an enemy unit at any point, and it's like interrogate, bang, that is a very different matter than this specific unit killed a specific unit there. Yeah. So yeah, cool. We will move on to the next unit we've got, which is this one. It's the Brazen Beasts. Now, everyone's going to be super excited to hear about this one. We guessed it would come with Sentinel based on what they said, and we were right. It comes with Sentinel and Motley Armaments, which we kind of maybe have guessed. I think Carlo maybe said that, or I can't remember if me or Carlo had said that a long time ago. So this is basically exactly what we expected in terms of rules. The Motley Armaments, in case you've forgotten, is the ability that Zorse Riders come with. If you're attacking the flank, get 1, and if it's the rear, get both of the following abilities, +1 attack, die, crit blow, or defenders lose abilities this turn. They have 6 move. Hey, love it. Targ infantry with 6 move. There, we're talking. Let's go. 3+ to hit. Yes. 654 profile. Oh god, what a piece of shit is that? That's a piece of crap. Where's my 7? Where's my 754? My 764? Come on. What the fuck is this? 5 armor. Okay, but I get the 6 move. That kind of like offsets it. Maybe it's 6 morale. Yeah, cool. Yeah, this is not bad. It's fine. And then you go, so it's a 5-point unit, yeah? And you go, no, it's 6 points. And you go, what the fuck is this 6-point units for? And then you move on with your life. So, next thing we've got to discuss is the Brazen Beast Captain. No. Okay. I'll stop and actually talk about these for a little bit longer. I don't like this unit. I actually really like. So I'm a big fan of Sentinel. I think Sentinel's a very good ability. I would sit here and say to you that Sentinel on Sentinels is probably their redeeming feature, which is a lot to be said about Sentinels as probably the only basically unpicked Baratheon unit in the meta completely. Everything else in Baratheons is basically picked somewhere, except maybe Rose Knights. In a meta list, here's what I'm talking. But like Sentinels just never picked anywhere close to meta lists, and I'm not just saying meta lists, but like good lists. And this is a very similar kind of deal to Sentinels in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's pretty sad. Yeah, Post says a point that I've made multiple times. Feels like being a 6-point melee infantry unit is the worst thing to be in this game if you want to have decent rules. Yes, 6-point melee infantry is a piece of shit in this game. And I'm not over exaggerating here. There are basically no main line 6-point melee infantry who are worth their value. And I really mean that. There's one, maybe two. In Lannister, this is where the maybe comes in. We see Red Cloaks, super maybe, but they're not really a melee infantry unit. They're a utility unit, right? They're a utility unit that offer you some value at range. And the panic tests, which is the whole thing of Lannister, right? And then people in chat, straight away, how many points do you guys? Sorry, She-Bears. Yes, She-Bears at 6. Why? Because they are literally, do the maths on this, right? It's nuts. They have exactly the same damage output as Starksworn Swords at 5 points compared to She-Bears at 6. Pretty much under nearly every single rank condition, they are basically the same, right? Minor differences. The only difference being that for 1 point more on She-Bears, you get to purchase, yes, Warcry for 1 point. Literally Warcry for 1 point. And that is worth it. Like that, if that alone is worth it, it has nothing to do with the She-Bears. The She-Bears base stats are identical basically to Starksworn Swords. And that's why it's so stupid. Someone's saying Blackguard. Yes, Blackguard. Again, Blackguard for 6, really what you're playing for is the Horrific Visage. And if you don't have any way of making the Horrific Visage better, generally speaking, like, you very rarely see people pick up naked Blackguards just having the list. Neutrals do because the neutrals, right, they don't count. But other factions don't just pick up a naked unit of Blackguard and go, there you go, haha, danger unit. It's just like, who gives a shit? I don't give a fuck. Soon Jensen says Eddard Honor Guard. Yeah, I mean, I don't count. I'll take it back, right, about that one. Eddard Honor Guard are good. I don't really consider them a 6-point unit soon, and that's not because they're not a 6-point unit. They are, which you're very fair in pointing out, but they're also like a character unit, and character units, generally speaking, I do like Kingsguard at 6 are fine. The problem is Joffrey, not the Kingsguard. Kingsguard have their own issues, but like Joffrey is the main issue that makes Kingsguard unplayable. But Kingsguard are a fine 6-point unit. Eddard's Honor Guard are a very good 6-point unit, and Eddard Commander happens to be good, so they're worth it. But I don't really count the character units per se, because it's locked behind how good the commander is rather than how good the unit is, really. Hence the reason that Renly's Honor Guard is a piece of shit, because the unit's fine, although it's not good for 8. By no stretch good for 8, but it's fine for 8. But Renly's combination with them is just not good. Gypsy says Rule of Faithful are good. No, they're okay, but like no, they're only worth it if you invest more points into them and throwing bad money after bad. Still fit Brazen Beast at least help out by making a better infantry list with targs. Yeah, it gives you some ability in an infantry list, but like, no, you just don't see them played, don't see them run. I like Sentinel. I really like Sentinel. I will run these guys because I love Sentinel that much, and I like making the use out of motley armaments by being a scrub with positioning and being like, haha, lol. everyone's going to just reveal their flanks to everybody. Lol, 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 lol. And you know what? Sentinel with set for charge, pikeman kind of like 2 pike, 2 brazen, maybe. But I think the problem is you kind of have to add freedmen in here to make this unit actually a threat. And if these guys aren't getting the flank, it's just sadness. Like actually sadness. Some people saying Sunspear Dervishes and Vipers. Maybe Martel Dervishes, maybe Martel Dune Vipers are fine at 6. Stephen, right, Stefan, apologies. I'm not convinced Dune Vipers are that good. People say they're OP, people say they're broken, but like it's a 6-point unit with no defensive abilities that work at ranged, and the best way to deal with this is the thing, right? They're quick, but like 6-point infantry are competing with Lightbringers. They're competing with Lancer Crossbowmen. They're competing with even Stark Bowmen, right? And I don't think Stark Bowmen are by far the worst of those 3 by a freaking country mile. But Stark Bowmen can tear these things to shreds. At 6 points, I'm looking for something that's going to have threat at that level and impact at that level, and a lot of those units just don't achieve it. If you see all the 6-point units, apart from She-Bears, say Blackguards defensively, fine. Tully shields sometimes get picked up. I'm trying to think any other 6-pointers we see. We'll ignore the Martels for a second. But nearly all the other 6-pointers we see get picked up are range units in Crossbowmen, Lightbringers. Like Mountain's Men get played, and what we saw with the likes of Kevin, Rising, and the kind of Mountain's Men picks, Crossbowmen are just better. Just run Crossbowmen. The Mountain's Men. We saw people go, like Red Cloaks are good, and it's like, yeah, probably just run Crossbowmen. It's probably better. Red Cloaks do see some play, which is still good, but again, the utility. In Starks, they've got like a bazillion 6-point units, and we see She-Bears, and that is it. The others are just objectively not very good. Baratheons don't run 6-point units in any of their good lists, and if they do, they're investing more points into enchantments such as R'hllor Faithful, Avec, Stag Knight Noble. There you go. You're looking for horse, you're looking for cavalry at 6, you're looking for archers at 6. So yeah. Ones. Black Tide Chosen are a good 6-point unit. Yeah, shame they cost 7. Yes, so some people saying that Targs needed a 6-point infantry unit. They did. And this is actually one thing I can say, that infantry unit at 6 points in Targaryens is useful. It is important for the infantry style builds. The problem is, like, Terra's kind of right, like Screamers at 6. Like if you're not getting a flank with the Brazen Beasts, Screamers are just better. Like, sure, the only thing you don't do is contest, but you have exactly the same attack profile on a 3+. You get more dice without having the setup, more wounds before you lose a rank. You have better morale. You have a free cav move. Yeah. I don't know. Stormcrow bows, yeah, Stormcrow archers already existed for Targs. Yeah, but they're not an actual melee infantry unit, so I can get the understanding there. Yeah, I'm not sure. What actually sucks, where the problem here, and a lot of people liken them obviously with the Motley Armament to Zorse Riders, is that if these guys aren't getting the flank, then it's very hard to justify 6 dice on 3s. Very hard. Because what do we know about Targs? They don't have access to really any keywords. Like, these guys, when they get stuck into melee, are just shit. Like, they're just shit. Like, Motley Armaments doesn't do anything unless they're in the flank. And the 654 profile, yeah, sure, the drop-off's not good. They're like, it's like Free-Folk Raiders, right? Free-Folk Raiders on a 4+. Right, this is the thing. This is a unit of Free-Folk Raiders with +1 to hit. And you're paying 2 more points. In the current game, I just... No. No. I mean, yeah, West Coast Martels. Yeah. Titans will be charging to do anything. Yep. And that's where Sentinel doesn't really work, because unless you're going to charge in. Is there some really janky, weird stuff where you set up with pikemen to deliberately offer flanks to freedmen and brazen beasts so they can charge in off Sentinel, get potentially gang up? All right, all right. I'll give you this. Okay. You can legitimately, for 9 points, run a unit of freedmen and a unit of brazen beasts, with the pure intent of running the freedmen ahead, the brazen beasts behind the unit, even though that negates the whole maneuvering and moving around. But just fully with the intent of the freedmen taking a charge that they cannot survive, right? And because you can get out activation with this, because you're using 3-point units as well as 6, you can open the door for gang up, specifically from the freedmen, allowing the brazen beasts in, because they can shift across and open the door. But your intention is just to stand there with the freedmen and go, I'm gonna die. What you gonna do about it? And then they charge your freedmen, and then you go, haha, Sentinel, I'm now gonna charge you on your turn. Get shut down. And then activate an attack and go, haha, I get to do all of that. And after all is said and done, I'm just gonna go, cool, I guess. Like, I took a Sentinel charge, 6 dice on 3s, into another attack, 6 dice on 3s. Like, there's very little in the game that dies to that, really. Anything that you care about anyway. And we're talking about 2 back-to-back attacks here, and there's very little in the game that really cares about it. And that's pretty sad for a 6-point unit. Like, and that requires them just charging your freedmen, which, you know. Yeah, Desmond, cool, you did maybe 4 wounds. I'm so glad I paid for this 6-point unit when I could have bought Stormcrow Mercs and a free 1-point attachment with me for less points. Sorry, guys. Not sold me on the Brazen Beasts. If Carlo was here, he'd probably say the same. He'd probably say, these guys suck. What the fuck are they thinking? And I kind of share that, unfortunately. Sorry about that one. I wanted to be hyper about them. And I do think, you know, as I say, Sentinel's always nice. But, yeah. Mickey, you forgot that Jorah handed out precision and you rolled all 6s. So the problem there, Marwyn, is you can't use Jorah's scout openings on the start of your opponent's turn. It's a start of friendly turn only, which, if you've been in the UK GT Discord, is different to start of any turn. And the problem being is because you can't use it at the start of any turn, your Sentinel would be without rerolls and precision. It would only be the second attack in a row. And if you're using Jorah's scout openings on this, I have no words. That would be bad. Could you take the Unsullied Officer with the extra move? You could do, but you need something to get hit is the problem. Yeah, like, I want to like them. I'll run them. I will test them. And the models do look cool, which is awesome. But I think right now I would struggle to see how this gets used much else. Sorry, guys. Sorry to ruin everyone's day on this one. Give me Stormcrow Mercs with Brienne, also 6 points, hit on 3+ against the chosen unit. Yep. The thing you lose out is the 5+. You do lose, so the 6 move. You do lose out on the morale as well, going up to, well, you go up to 7, kind of, and then you go back down to 5, which is a win, and you also have 4 armor. So basically you're trading +1/+1 a Bron effect versus 1 speed, and you have more dice, and you can attack off bags. The Motley Armament and Sentinel. The Sentinel has to be used for a maneuver to get into a flank, to then charge in the flank. But again, like, someone knows you've got Sentinel. This isn't a card that comes in your deck. You're also not running Drogo, so you've got Swift Retreat. When do you run Swift Retreat over Sentinel? Like, nah. Not sold. Sorry, let's stop talking about it. And then we have the Brazen Beast Captain. Now, would they be better with a 754? Yes, Gypsy. Honestly, yes. With Motley Armaments for potentially 8 crit blow, it just makes them a 6-point unit that can be very scary. You can't just run in as a 4-point unit when this is already activated, because, you know, your 4-point units, you've got auto activation potentially. You can't just run in and tie a unit up and then take a Sentinel charge in the flank like that, because all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, 8 dice with crit blow, hitting on, like in my flank, this could be really dangerous. But yeah, Brazen Beasts at 6 are never going to be outnumbering, and they're never going to have the maneuver to realistically get there, where Zorses don't. And again, if you're using Brazen Beasts for doing all of those things, you probably just use Zorse Riders instead, because Zorse Riders cost the same amount of points. They do exactly the same thing, and they have things like Elusive Escape, right? Ugh. Right, Brazen Beast Captain then. Insight. Reminder there, it's before rolling attack dice, vicious and highest attack die value. Furious Charge, we've seen this on multiple different things now. It's the vulnerable when you successfully charge an enemy. And Iron Resolve, which is quite a nice defensive ability, and I think a lot of people undersell how good Iron Resolve is. One of the best parts of Harmon Ulla, the change to the Walrus Chieftain gave him Iron Resolve and probably pushed him too far over the lip of being good. He's relatively unplayed. You don't see him played in any of the lists that I will build for Free Folk, but actually Walrus Clan Chieftains are good for the 2 points, Resilience and Iron Resolve. Brazen Beast Captains with Insight, Furious Charge and Iron Resolve come in at a measly 2 points. And again, if Carlo were here, we'd just finish this conversation now. Like, that would be it. 2 points. Okay, move on. I don't want to throw him out of the pan just yet. Say he's useless. It's a lot of stuff for 2 points. It's kind of cool. Terra in chat, absolutely superb. He costs 1 ? Marwin says 2 points. Immediate comment after Terra says trash. Yeah, he's just not that good. You think putting this guy in Stormcrow Mercs is maybe a 6-point average unit worth taking? Yeah, so Stormcrow Mercs with this guy, you're 6+ morale basically now with the -1 wound. You make things vulnerable on the charge. You can have vicious and highest attack die roll. You're a 6-point infantry unit. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that that's better than this unit right here, but I think that is probably better. Like, that's the problem. Stormcrow Mercs with this attachment in is probably better for 6 points than the goddamn unit that came out. Terra says every unit in the game should have adaptive built in. No. Yeah, I mean, yes, but also no. I'd just be much happier if they just removed some of the cost on the attachments. Just bring them down in cost. Gypsy, I don't want to keep putting stuff in Stormcrows. Neither do I. I don't want to put stuff in Stormcrows, Gypsy, but it works, and when things work, you should do them. Oh, it's sad, isn't it? I was a big fan, right? I am a big fan of making attachments better, right? But making attachments not synergize that well with the unit that they come with. And you're probably thinking, what on earth are you talking about, right? I did talk about this once before, but it is difficult to implement, and they would never do it with the system that they have. But for example here, the Brazen Beast Captain could have some abilities that don't really synergize well with the Brazen Beasts. But you automatically get him for free in that unit. And you only pay if you want to have a different attachment in the unit. Now that would work all the way up until you realize that like relentless attachments would be a problem, but like if relentless wasn't on Watch Captains in Night's Watch and it was like everyone else's, only on a named attachment, that wouldn't be a problem because you could just have certain person in the Night's Watch. Sod it, John, John 3-pointer. Will come in with Ghost, make John 3 points, give him a Relentless instead of Warcry, for example, and you go, right, cool, and then that way you pay for it there. But yeah, it is way more restrictive, Terra. But the reason I suggested that originally is you don't inadvertently create combos that are very dangerous. That's actually the problem. It's undercosted combos that are a problem. And adaptive in everything allows undercosted units to perform at a higher level than perhaps they should. For example, you shouldn't be picking up 6-point units and saying if I just add a 1-point Dario attachment to them, for example, but it still costs me 6, and this damage output is now equivalent to literally any 7-point unit you can put on the board. Because then if any 7-point unit is simply competed in damage output at a 6-point value, then 7-pointers become irrelevant unless they're incredibly defensive. And this is kind of like the whole arms race thing, right? If a 5-point unit can have such a high level of damage output compared to a 6 or 7-point unit, like we've been discussing earlier today, what is the point taking the more expensive unit unless you're paying for certainty in terms of tokens, or you're paying for defensive abilities? Like, why would you need to increase? You can't increase your damage output because we say initially that you can't increase your damage output because of the way that they've currently got the scaling on the units is the problem. Like, if they scaled the units better, attachments would make more sense. Like, it's as simple as that. Like, scaling on units would make way more sense, or attachments would make way more sense if scaling on units was better. And that's the problem that needs to be fixed first. And yeah, I do agree that attachments should just be better for 1. Stark has hardened for 1, yep. And you couldn't. The problem is, and to some extent, this is where I do forgive the designers a little bit. The designers are never going to make a perfect game, and they can't ever tell from the data that they look at. And if the designers ever watch this, I feel like they really should know this. They probably do, right? I don't care. But the point is, the data pools that they're looking at, they can't balance around that number of games effectively. Not with the kind of combos that we saw coming out. How it didn't take us that long with Varamir to come out for Free Folk players to go, here's something that's borderline broken. Like I say borderline broken. Like, this doesn't lose unless the skill set of the two individuals is so different in contrast. And specifically, it doesn't even matter if the opponent is that good. As long as I play well, the opponent can't do anything about it. And stuff like that. How it took us a week, less than a week, a few days for Offal and the balance. I mean, we saw the problems with Offal as soon as we saw the bloody spoilers. It was kind of like, oh, that's obviously broken. I don't think they've had playtesters stress testing it in the way that they perhaps need or want. Now, I don't know if they want that or not, but they don't have it in the way that they need. Certainly not that's getting through to them. And while I think that that's a separate issue in some ways, I would forgive them a lot more if the units were fine. But attachment and unit combinations, there are a lot of potential attachment unit combinations that already exist. Now, it doesn't take long for players like myself, Carlo, all the other good players out there as well, to sit there and look at something and go, that's not a very good attachment, I'm not even going to bother, right? And, well, yeah, I'll talk about that one, Terra, very briefly. So Raiders is terrible at 8, and you got it changed to 7. The problem is that Raiders at 8 morale have exactly the reverse problem, in that it just makes Mance even more better. Even more better. Wow, that's terrible English. You had to, and it's also not the 8 morale, it was actually the +2 wounds on failed panic tests across the board, which was kind of dumb at the time, because with the information that we had, you'd have just literally lost your units, especially to Waffle. You'd have just been blown off the board literally every game. And I'm not saying that you weren't, and I'm not saying that people weren't, and that's what everyone else was suffering from. But like, it just makes the game unpalatable at that level. But yeah. So yeah, the problem is like balancing every attachment with every unit combination with good data. Like, I'm not going to sit here and rattle on about the stats too much, but like, we've been collecting stats from season 1 since it started, basically, right? And we have data from pre-season 1. And I'm not going to lie, guys, some of the stuff is fairly obvious that it shouldn't be picked and it's not very good. And there's a lot at the top here that gets picked a lot, right? But how many things do we have to go down to? Let's go middle of the pack somewhere. Here. Do we see most of these things that often? And the truth is, no, we don't. Right? Now, some of these things don't have a lot of testing in terms of balancing. Like Stormcrow, Stormcrow Lieutenant in Targ there. It doesn't have a lot of things it can go in. But people don't play around with attachments that much. So Stormcrow Lieutenant in Targ, let's see how many games this has actually played in total. 100 games it's been present in. But that's in an entire year. It's played 100 games in an entire year. Like, that's not that much. Not really. That is, on average, 2 games a week. And when you're considering that there are, what, 3,000-4,000 active players on stats, to get 2 games on average a week is like not much for testing something. Now, if you consider that these things are not tested for that long by nearly as many players, Stormcrow Lieutenants probably tested in a maximum of 20 games. Maximum 20 games in a testing cycle. Because they don't test as much as they think they do. Right? And that's the problem. Now, Stormcrow Lieutenant, he's kind of obvious how good or bad he is, right? But there are other attachments out there who probably see less play or more play, I don't know. Let's Merentrant. Yes, try Merentrant. See how he's doing. 148. He's Lannisters. He could go in so many units. He just doesn't, right? And that's the problem, is that they simply don't test fast enough. And this is with thousands of games of data, like thousands and thousands of games of data, right? And not all combinations can be tested. We will find attachment and unit combinations that kind of break things if they raise the power level of attachments to be suited. That's why I don't think you can give adaptive to everything, because you could eventually find ways of breaking it. That being said, I do think they should raise the power of attachments across the board anyway. Make them worthwhile taking. I don't think you have to do much, because if you look at a lot of the better units and a lot of the better factions out there, a lot of them are taking attachments, not just because of adaptive, they are taking attachments because attachments can provide value. Warcry, for example, very common pickup. What else do we see? Watch Captains, obviously, at 3. We've seen those plenty of times. Rickon Osher, access to Shaggy, really good value. Tormund, obviously, coming in with the Champions of the Faith as well for the Warcry. Raid leaders are picked up all the time, obviously, in Free Folk. Don't really count them. Mormont veterans picked up a lot, doing very well for themselves. Davos, we see Davos a lot in those short Baratheon lists. But Unsullied Officers doing quite well. Hey, good for him. Things are picked up, right, and things are played. I'm not going to sit here and say they're amazing, but like, there are stuff out there that is good, that is playable. The problem is, for all of these things that are good and playable, there's then these things, which are garbage. Bronn, I always find is really interesting, because Bronn gets played a lot. Bronn gets played a lot, right? Now, this is only tracks Bronn specifically in neutrals. Bronn gets played a lot, and he's bad. Like, bad. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think a lot of these are run without You know, champion. None of these top ones are running Stormcrow Mercs that often. Davos might be actually a little bit, to be fair to Davos. Mormont Vets maybe is a little bit, but Fortune Seekers obviously aren't. Unsullied Officers are. Waterford Gardens can't be. Glory Seekers can't be. Hardened Rangers aren't. Carl isn't. Sometimes Alistair Thorne is, usually not. Carl isn't. You know, Red Priestesses aren't. Like, a lot of these things aren't. You know? So yeah. I don't know. They do need to change attachments, obviously. Attachments are bad. I don't think just across the board adaptive everywhere is necessarily a good solution, though, because I think you'll see some nasty things come off the back of that. That's not a problem, but you know, if everything's unbalanced, is anything unbalanced, right? That's the question. But I don't know if it just eventually makes those underused units even more underused. And I'd rather they fix the units first and then, you know, make, because units are where the majority of issues come from and stem from. And then come along attachments and come along and raise the power of them afterwards. For me personally, anyway. So yeah. All right. So anyway, I went on about those for ages. We got the Brazen Beast Captain, the Brazen Beasts, the Pirates, and the Pirate Lysene Bosun, all coming to the US on the 17th of March. So yeah, that's my takeaway there. Pirates, yeah. Bosun, hype, but unneeded. Beasts, boo. Brazen Captain, 2-point attachment, who cares? Cool. Anyway, on to the second part of today, which was going to be about terrain. So we'll do a slight interim, we'll do a slight mid-episode break, and just talk about an event that is running next period. Not next week at all. This is running in April, and the information there, of course, is unreadable because first of all it's blurry, and second of all it's in Polish. But War Factory are running a team event in Poland in April, on the 1st of April to the 2nd of April. A lot of people already said they're going. A lot of people are interested. It's got a lot of hype at the moment over in Poland. A stats event is coming to stats. It's not been set up on stats yet, but it will be set up on stats, I believe. But Schuster wanted me to talk about this just briefly and talk about how the fact that this is coming up. So if you're interested in attending a team event in Poland, do check it out. For reference, information is in Polish. English translations, I'm sure, will be made available. But it's a 2-day event on the 1st and 2nd of April. You play 3 to 4 games day 1, depending on how many teams. 2 games day 2. There's currently unlimited space, and it's using the same rules as the CMON team format document that we saw released, I think, last year. So yeah, if you're interested in that, do check it out. It will be on stats soon. Okay. Right. Into other news, I said we'd talk about terrain. Should we talk about terrain? We'll talk about terrain. Dun dun dun. Waiting for a game to capture. This one. There we go. So, I'm not going to spend too long on this because I realise it's already an hour and a half in and I have not even started. So, I was just going to do kind of a quick update for players who perhaps aren't used to playing with terrain and seeing terrain and thinking about terrain. And I know that people really liked my episode on deployment. So, I'm going to try and give you lots of information around terrain in a nice, easy, digestible format that people care about. Oh, come on, Boggs, stupid thing. Right. I'll get out each piece of terrain and show you, just briefly, great, what I need to think about it. I'm not going to use a list today, and I know people kind of perhaps liked me using a list. I can bring a list in if people want me to, but the simple truth of the matter is that I do think it's list dependent, but I think terrain is heavily list dependent, more so than deployment. Deployment is actually a lot list dependent. You know, again, I'll point this out again, right? Okay. Your mileage may vary. Mileage may vary. Don't take everything I say as gospel, please, for the love of God. So, yeah, while terrain is more malleable to list format than deployment can be in some ways. You also have your own favored terrain for a given list. And this is what I'm going to talk about here briefly. Always take stakes, says Gypsy, and forests win, bushes suck, done. Yeah, pretty much. There's one piece of terrain missing of the 8 that are available, and it is indeed the hedge. I'll be honest, I use hedges sometimes. This is what a hedge looks like in real life. For a Song of Ice and Fire, generally speaking, if you choose a hedge, you know why you're choosing a hedge, and you plan to use it. It comes with destructible, rough, and cover keywords. But in general, guys, if you'd roll this randomly, you're pretty sad. It's probably the last thing you wanted to place on the board. Use it as simply a way of blocking some information from your opponent. For example, if you've got a unit of archers that wants to be able to shoot, use a hedge, because you can put a unit here. It's just an example of something like it. Make it 2D so we get the nice things. A unit here, a unit here, and then you can have a unit here, and lo and behold, you can shoot through the hedge, but the thing you're shooting at can't shoot you back. This is because the sight arcs of said red unit over here are blocked. Can't see this side of the hedge because you're not there. Can't see this side of the hedge because you're not there, because the 2 units block line of sight here. Is this formation ever really that good? Short answer is nope, it's a piece of shit. You'll probably never do this, but that is kind of like the best scenario for a hedge, because even then you're like, haha, my range unit's going to shoot at one of these, and it goes, oh well, I'll declare a charge, except it's going to be like maybe an 8, except it's a 9 because I'm on the hedge, and oh shit, hang on, that's a 4+, and if you're a 4 movement, that's a 5+. Rip. You're just going to lose. So yeah, this is not a good way of deploying. You can try and do this as well, where you're touching and blocking and not actually on the hedge. Again, I think you're going to be very particular if you can manage that. You can try, if you want to, run the 3 units like this. You would actually be viewable from the front if you're straight on, because there is line of sight arc here. So I could see you down that gap. However, what you can actually do is pivot that unit in like that, and pivot that unit in like that, and it would block any line of sight, and you're unchargeable as well. This is a bit more common, something you can consider, and then when you're charging, the hedge doesn't impact your pivot charge. Yeah, you have a bit of leeway on the pivot charge there. So just something to consider. Do I think hedges are good? No, I think they're not really that good. There is some opportunity to use them if you draw them. Some lists can use them okay, such as the Lightbringer lists from Baratheons with Mel. But other than that, guys, hedges are rubbish. Let's throw it over there. Didn't fall off the table. There we go. It doesn't deserve it. Right. So we then have the other terrain pieces. Move all these bad boys out of the way for now. And we'll start with perhaps the easiest to explain piece, which is the forest. Forests have 2 things going for them, really, and that is the cover from range attacks, but you don't really care that often, or you have the +1 armor. Now, I'm actually a big fan of the forest giving the +1 armor, especially if you're a unit that wants armor rather than losing its own rerolls. If you don't care about rerolls and stuff, then you're probably looking at using the low wall. But if you want +1 armor and you don't care about your opponent's rerolls, this is perfect. Also, the old I'm a solo, lol, you now can't see me if you're a ranged unit and you're outside the forest, get wrecked. That's still a thing, that's still something you can try and do. It's harder to do with unlocked trays because you don't get the fine pivot on them. Whoops. But yeah, in general, guys, solos inside forests are happy days. Okay, put it back a bit. There we go. Solos inside forests. completely covered. Lovely. So yeah, that's what you want. Works well for giants actually, because they don't care about the armor, but they want the armor themselves. Same with dragons. I don't have 3 thumbs. There you go. I'll cross my hands instead. Yeah. So giants, dragons, they love this kind of stuff. Wolves don't mind it either with the base sundering that they have, plus the cav move to move out and then do the charge without having to worry about the cover. Happy days for all of those kinds of things. Can be useful if you're going to range battle. You know, you can kind of slot in a unit here, try and get the ranged battle. You have a bit of overlap on the side now, meaning that if you've got units, even a unit here, and this is the kind of range battle you've got, this unit can see this. This unit can't shift the 2 to get an angle around that forest. You're talking at a minimum angle over there. So all of a sudden, this unit's is gonna really struggle in this fight because it can't shoot its opposing number. So just bear that one in mind. Something to take consideration of. Forests, I would say, are a piece that you should definitely be thinking of placing. Certainly, I think you should be using. Let's add it to the side of things that we like. Yay! So yeah, dragons and giant lists, solo lists, love these. Range units potentially love these, and anything that wants armor but doesn't care about giving its opponent armor too much also likes these. That comes down to unit matchups and your list versus your opponent, knowing, does my opponent want +1 armor? The answer is always going to be yes, but like if you've got sundering and they've got 6+ armor saves everywhere, you don't care. If you have 4+ and your opponent doesn't have access to sundering, suddenly making yourself 3+ actually kind of useful defensively. So just consider that. All right, so that's woods, forests out of the way. Next one, easy, werewoods. There is a common tendency for this to happen, especially if you've got 2 newer players. If anyone's seen a battlefield like this at a local beginners tournament, something a bit like that, yeah? That's what normally happens, is people go, I'll place a weirwood, I'll place a corpse pile, I'll place a weirwood, I'll place a corpse pile. Oh look, we've got those 4 pieces of terrain. And then you look down the board and you see, look, there's 4 pieces, 2 weirwoods, 2 corpse piles, and the next board is 2 weirwoods, 2 corpse piles, and the next board is 2 weirwoods, 2 corpse piles, and the next board is, and so on and so forth. If you've seen this at a local tournament near you, do not fret. Hopefully that will go away soon if people watch this video. If I place this down on the board right here, okie dokie. First deployment, I'll put a corpse pile in the middle. Right? Lesson 1. My opponent maybe wants me to have worse morale. What's their second deployment going to be? What is their second terrain deployment going to be? This over here? Probably? Or maybe it's this one over here. Right? This is what you see all the time. Right? This is their first. Let's make that a nice green colour to say that's down. It's been placed. Right? And then it could be either of these 2 yellowy ones over here. Whoops. Or, oh, I've just flipped it around. That's clever of me. Over here. Okay? Now the cool thing is, with this weirwood, that I am going to place a nice red colour. Let's make it nice stand out. If I place that there, well, hang on. 7, let's make it closer. 6.7, let's move it even closer. 5.8, bit further off. Bit further. 6. 7, so I can actually move it slightly further up this way. Something a little bit like that. 6.3, 6.3, that'll do. The point is, the AoE of this particular unit is about that. Yeah? Well, this terrain piece. Make that red. No, I'll make that blue because that's good for us. The AoE for these corpse piles, oops, is slightly less. Oh god, that's a horrible map. Well, there you go. Now that you know, if you reset, it changes the map color. The AoE for the corpse pile is going to be about that, right? In relation to the weirwood is the only bit I care about, right? Now the point is, if these are roughly speaking the same AoEs, roughly, and I'm only putting this down roughly, the overlap, if I'm anywhere in here, my morale is just base, right? Which means that with one weirwood, I've counteracted 2 corpse piles for the vast majority of units that are going to be in those areas. So this is where you need to think a lot more about weirwood placement, right? Because what is it? And this is the crux. This is actually the big crux of a corpse pile deployment. This is -1 morale, sure. But it also comes with hindering. It removes your rerolls. The reason I'm putting this here is in part because I want the -1 morale. But it's also because I want to remove your rerolls. Right? The problem is if I just go, 2 weirwoods, I put you put a weirwood here, for example, as the second placement. Then I put the yellow weirwood there and I put that there and we go, haha, there we go. And I just go, cool. So I'll just deploy here, like I normally was going to, with my units inside 6 inches of the weirwood and the corpse pile, and if you want to charge me, you still have to lose your rerolls. I'm still winning. I've still won this engagement because I removed your rerolls. It's not about the morale. And the problem is, if you come from this angle, and this weirwood's quite close, actually, you see this all the time, right? Let's draw a circle around this. About there, give or take. That's way off, actually. Rub that one off. How far away from each other are they? They are 11, call it 12 inches, right? So that circle will be about there, right? And the problem is, this unit that wants to attack at this angle, along with this guy here, and this guy maybe here, doesn't have the cover of the weirwood. This is a weak unit. Yeah? So you weaken this attack, so this weirwood has to be much further in. Almost here. Right? And we're talking about this being your second deployment, and this is what people do all the time, right? They kind of just auto default to putting this unit on the board. And again, the problem here, any unit there is still only within 6 of the weirwood, or corpse pile. So you have to be in much further to get the benefit, right? And then people try and go, haha, well, I'll swing around here and I'll be inside the weirwood and not be inside the corpse pile. And I'm like, yeah, cool, but I'm like sitting here. I'm sitting like here. And I'm sitting over here. Something like that, right? And I just get the benefits anyway. So realistically, this whole double weirwood placement doesn't work at countering that well a corpse pile. Not in my opinion, anyway. I don't think a double weirwood is good, especially if you deploy them like this, right? And you've probably seen terrain deployed very similarly to this. You'd be much better off, this weirwood, actually coming back to more like here. Because if we're to redraw that circle, again, we're looking at a distance of about 8-9 inches now. We draw our circle, we'll be about 3 inches off. So it's about there, give or take, say, some bad measurements and bad drawing, right? That'll do, for the sake of the argument. And if I'm controlling the middle objective, hang on, this weirwood's not helping me. But it's helping me when I engage you. So now I'm swinging it differently. I'm actually making the -1 affect my opponent and the rerolls affect me. This is now a neutral piece of terrain, this corpse pile. My opponent placed it. Right? And then someone will say, but Mickey, they'll just pick this side with the weirwoods here. And I go, yeah, they probably will. Right? But then you get to choose first and second player. If you get to choose first and second player, you're in the middle first. And isn't that what you wanted? Surely? Because then that removing the rerolls that they were trying to do to you, you're going to do to them. And you know what your list does. So you have the opportunity of choosing that. You put the burden of choice a lot more on your opponent to make right choices based on their list, and yourself making right choices for your list, right? So there's something to consider, right? With more defensively placing weirwoods. Also, interestingly, at 10 inches, you can deploy within weirwoods, which means that, hey, something like a Melisandre bomb, slightly less scary on round 1. And then you attack at this angle. You still bring things this way, but you can attack at this angle. And then we talk about the second weirwood. Is it worth deploying a second weirwood? Well, if I've established that I've countered these 2 corpse piles with this 1 weirwood placement, why am I not putting something over here to prevent my opponent coming across? Or to create an unfavourable matchup for them? And this is where you can get something like a palisade or a stakes involved. There you go. I'm now going to sit here with my ranged unit. And what are you going to do? You're going to come this way? Come put resources around this way? Because the rest of my force is coming this way. Right? I can still see you. I'm going to shoot you in the flank. If you just let me. So you better have a unit over here. So hang on. All of a sudden you're investing resources to come over here. And the more resources you invest to come over here, the better. Right? Now, this is very if and but, right? This is very depending on what your opponent list is, what tools they have, what tools you have, this kind of thing, right? But with a careful placement on a palisade, you can sit something like this. Yes, you give yourself open massively to a flank, but you give yourself nice, easy shots. And if your opponent isn't deployed here, which they shouldn't be in the early game, they now have to bring a unit. If it's cavalry, they'll bring this round and then they'll come round. That's fine. If it's an infantry unit, they may be parked here, and then are going to march here round 2. But you're here at the end of round 2. You're happy days. So they're probably here. So they're suddenly blocked in, so they're going to have to move into your flank and then charge you, which requires taking horses or something like that. Or they maybe got within range of the palisade to break it into a charge off swords or something. My point is you're making them invest resources to changing the landscape. And if they do come at this direction, go figure. Oh look, they're inside that corpse pile now. And there's no weirwood here, because I'm an idiot and put a weirwood here. There's no weirwood to protect them. Stuff like that, right? That's the way I'm thinking about it when I'm thinking about this. And as you say, you know, but Mickey, my opponent got to choose deployment side, so they picked this side. Let's flip it round. So they're deploying here. And I go, cool. So I'm now going to execute their game plan of getting to the objectives first. Boom. You're thinking, why am I facing this way rather than this way? They were keen on facing this way. Well, if I face this way, right, the objective would be, roughly speaking, here. Should I put a game mode on so we can see the objectives? Is that 5 up? Yeah, it's a 5. That usually does the job, right? So for reference, the objective's there, yeah? Cool thing here, that's 6 inch. If they align this way, they're within 6 inches of the weirwood, definitely. They align 100%. They aren't. Yeah? And if you do it properly, now I haven't done it properly, you see, but they can align 6 inches here. And if you've got solo, or you've got archers, and you're sat here, you're just going, cool, well, I'll just shoot you in the flank. If you go here, I'll just shift a little bit along, move a little bit along, position myself here, and I'll shoot you in the flank all day. Greyjoy archers, this is what Mikkel does a lot on his Greyjoy archers, getting flanks like this, allowing him to shoot, getting the rerolls and stuff like that with the -1. You're counteracting the weirwood, so a net -1 morale on that attack. You're also getting the -1 armor, potentially getting other bonuses as well for hitting flank, causing panic checks on your unit. Yeah, but cool, whatever. It's the price of failure or the price of success. And if he doesn't do that to give you the flank, and he wants to come across to something like here, he might not be within the 6. And then, yeah, sure, shoot him in the front all day. Like, sure, I'm still in the front, but who cares? I've now got -1 from the corpse pile. So it's objectively better for him not to give you his flank, but instead to give him his front, because he gets -1 armor. But all of a sudden, he's not within the weirwood, right? And this is the big difference. So offset your units, play differently in that kind of way. Right? This is just talking about like lowly matchups. You know, yes, this infantry unit can be over here doing some work, but it's still a lot harder for this unit to now get into the flank over here to create a charge. Not impossible. Sentinel, pretty useful. Cavalry can still do that. There's lots of options there, but of course, you know, you might be playing middle and you might be playing left flank, and so you can put an infantry unit up here, for example, like here. Create a very unpleasant scenario for him to go and get involved here, and you're shooting in the flank here, for example, on a 3 objective game mode, and you can give this one over here, and maybe I'll just say you've got 4 units apiece, for example, here, maybe 5, and one of them's a cav. This unit can sit itself here, perhaps, and then you can sit another unit over here. Yeah? And the cool thing is you gave your opponent the weirwood, but you actually have a much better position. And if he ever wants to come off the corpse pile to come and get you, yeah, he comes off the corpse pile that he placed. He'll still be within 6, and he loses reroll on the charge. I'm happy with that. Like, that's awesome. Now, yes, we're not taking into account cavalry here and things like this, but there's a lot more you can do to break up the game than just place the double weirwood, double corpse pile. Weirwoods do come with the added bonus. The big thing on a weirwood is that it is the only piece of terrain basically in the game that is clear. Right? This creates not just a clear piece of terrain where it is sat, but also 6 inches either side. So you can equate it to be about 15 inches to 15 to 17 inches, give or take. Right? If you go 6 inches either side, you're about there. I'll do. And 6 inches on the other side, about there. So what is it? About 16, 17? 17 inches, give or take, slightly more. Closer to 18. 18 inches of free space, right? And if you've got 18 inches of free space with no terrain in it, that's nice. It's an 18-inch, basically circle, for want of a better term, with no terrain in it. That's a lot of free space for stuff like cavalry, where you don't have to worry about losing rerolls, anything like that. That has value. Guys, you know, 100% 18 inches where you don't have terrain is really valuable. The problem, or the point being, that is valuable when you get to do this. Because now you know that the middle of the board, I don't give a toss if a corpse file goes here and a corpse file goes here to counteract the weirwood. Because the point is that that is now an attack vector where you don't lose rerolls. Yeah, there's everything from there all the way through to basically there that you can attack in, right? And if you're running anywhere within that sector, so this bit and this bit, you now get your rerolls on your charges. So you can have these kind of lines where you set up like this, and that's okay for you. You know? Your opponent hasn't really counteracted you with the corpse piles, because it's the rerolls we care about, not the -1. Because look, everything's inside the weirwood anyway. -1 doesn't do anything. I don't give a toss about the -1. What I care about is that has rerolls. Okay? So the -1 and the +1 do matter. The -1 and the +1 are important factors, but it's so easy to counter 2 -1s or 2 +1s with one of the other side, if it's in a good position. So, start moving away from thinking that 2 weirwoods counters 2 corpse piles, or 2 corpse piles counters 1 weirwood. Not true. Factually not true. If all you care about is making more of the battlefield better for you, because you're against like a Melisandre list, sure, double weirwood is probably fine. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say a double weirwood is bad. It's not, right? But against something like a Melisandre list, you might legitimately go 1 there and 1 here, for example, and go, sod it. I'm going to get meld at some point this game. I want the protection, and I don't care which side of the board I get. I don't care which side of the board he gets. I just want the protection. All you're doing there is giving Melisandre full reign on the remaining terrain that they can have on the board. That's fine, like absolutely fine. If you want to do that, not an issue. But that's the way you need to think about it, rather than just simply +1 morale. There's a lot more to terrain than just one headline stat. That's all I'm going to say on weirwoods and corpse piles for now, but just think about them more than their morale modifier. Right. We'll move on to some of the weird and wonderful terrain now. So Hedges, I don't know where he came back in. Remember, these guys are bad. Just delete him. Actually, just delete him. In fact, I'm going to just quickly remind people that Hedges don't need to be picked or delete the bag. Right, cool. Palisades, you saw me using a Palisade there. Palisades have value, yeah. Palisades are great. One of Mikkel's favourites, one of my favourites. Anyone who plays archers, my favourite thing to do is dance around Palisades. And if Ross is watching this back at a later date, I'm sorry, Ross, because he suffers a lot from this. Drogon on stats. He sees me dancing around Palisades like this, being unchargeable all day, and it is the favourite of players like myself, Mikkel, and other players like that. If this is a ranged unit, let's put it about here. This is now basically unchargeable from the front unless you're a small solo, right? This has so much value. You have so much, like, you're one unit, but you actually control like this amount of space with it, rather than just I'm a ranged unit. You know, you exert this pressure. You exert more pressure with the 2-inch shift, but you create something that's not really chargeable. So all these melee infantry units, all these 6-point melee infantry units that we know and love from earlier in the episode, are all now gathered round going, sir, what do we do? We couldn't get within an inch to kill it, and if we did, we had to pivot weird. What do we do now, sir? And this one goes, aha, well, so I'll just shift 2 inches this way. Oh, no, that's dumb. I'll make myself chargeable. So I'll just shift back a little bit, shoot you there. Maybe you don't want to come this way a little bit. I'll shoot you there. Actually, stay where I am if I'm happy with that positioning. Can't quite see this unit. Oh, no, maybe I can. See? Yep, I can see you at that unit there. So I'm happy days. I'll just shoot away all day. Control the space, control the pacing, control the ability to engage your ranged units. Also, if units with shifts, or unit with free maneuvers, you know, position behind and then get a free maneuver like a cavalry and go, boop, hello, I am here to kill you. Or you come in and you do stuff like shifting, boop, charge. Unchargeable into 3-inch shift from, say, tack reposition. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's a bit generous. Yeah, no, about 1, 2, 3, that's about right, actually. Pivot, now charge here. That's a bit more palatable. Gypsy says, until I sentinel into the flank with my wonderful Brazen Beasts. Yes, you know, that's where they come in handy. Your Brazen Beast can sit there and go, haha, if you shoot one of my units, I'll sentinel to here, and then I'll charge you. And if I'm a unit of screamers, I'll go, I'll just move to here and charge you. You don't have to shoot me to do it. And actually, the sentinels, the screamers were already over here, because these guys only marched 12, whereas this guy went 6 and then 12. Anyway, yeah, Palisades are great for that. Palisades are also very popular. Some cases you can't put them within 6 of the board edge. Just bear that in mind, guys. So they have to be in a little bit. But even at 6 inches in, they can create alleyways down the edge of the board, which are unpalatable for infantry units to come down because they're hard to navigate. They don't have much playroom. It's very easy to block an infantry unit by controlling an objective, something like this. And you make it basically impossible for anything to engage you on the flank, and then impossible to engage you on the front. Yeah, so stuff like this can be very effective with a palisade. That is controlled. That is a unit of poor fellows with Warcry. There might be a weirwood somewhere like over here, and if you're lucky, you got 6 inches to the weirwood. I'm trying to think, something like there. 6 inches to the weirwood outside of the palisade range, and now you're controlling that. They have to kill this in order to do anything, allowing you to get much better control over the game, right? Stuff like that can work out really well, but not always to people's pleasure, to people's favourite things to do. Being said, the 6-inch palisade against the side of the board is still usable by solos, so a popular move to get solos into the game doing their thing because they can much more easily move around these palisades while also being a pain in the butt by doing stuff like this. And if you position it right, not there, it have to be more like here. Oh look, I'm now unchargeable from the front, and I'm chargeable from the side from an infantry unit. So my 4-point solo or even 3-point wolf solo is now holding up an 8-point infantry unit set over here, where you don't deploy slow units on the flanks. It's too easy to hold them up. Going back to deployment. So yeah, palisade's very popular, also against massed units, massed infantry units, so free for spam. People try and make palisades on the side of the boards like here and here to effectively lower the size of the board, because you're now playing with, well, they're about 6 inches long, give or take. So you're now playing, instead of a 48 board, you're playing on a 36-inch board, and that is a lot more palatable for some players to play on. Less likely to get flanked, easier to control positions and stuff when you're sat like this, or head on like here with certain spacing in between your units. So something like this. This is only an example, but none of those units can be charged by more than one thing, unless they're solos, which, you know, Free Folk have plenty of. But yeah, that would give you an idea of how that sits. You know, maybe a little bit more generous, but not much more. Except this one. This is where, you know, you create an overlap or something like here, and you can't be charged by two things here either. So something like that, nothing can be charged by more than one thing. Infantry blocks, happy days if you're running like a 5 infantry list, right? Forces them to destroy these. So stuff like that is possible, is plausible with double palisade placements, single palisade placements to break up infantry lines. I'm not a massive opponent or proponent. Opponent? No, I was right. I'm not a massive opponent of just putting a palisade near the middle, especially if the enemy has lacking cavalry, because if they can't horse up 5 into a sword's take to destroy the palisade easily, then destroying the palisade is actually quite hard for them and is quite big tempo loss. They might move up with infantry, then the first thing they do in round 2 is destroy it with swords. That means they might not be placing cards or drawing cards and placing a token or something like that, or not removing a token with bags, or not getting maneuver with horses or something like this. Like, that has an element of value, but you have to be very careful that your opponent isn't just going to, you know, take a solo, for example. And this, I've seen this happen so many times before, because you don't really care about move 1, and you move like 6 inches forward. You've actually positioned it well this game, so you're not going to see it. And then you pivot there at the end of the, yeah, I've done it well. Whoops. But if it was there, they then pivot there, and then they go, right, and my actual action would be to destroy it, and then it doesn't disturb the rest of their turn. It's a good way of disturbing the pace of the game, controlling the game, especially if you have a control faction that doesn't like long engagements, wants to control the game through kind of activation advantage, movement abilities, and just slowing the game down in the right way against the right kind of things. Works very well against like Baratheon style lists, which are quite slow to maneuver around those things. If they don't have the right tool set, they find it quite hard to remove them efficiently, and you can really slow up an enemy. So yeah, there's that there with palisades. Palisades are big. I think, you know, any good player, myself, Mikkel, Jacob, Carlo, Belisarius, I'm trying to think of the other popular names on stats off the top of my head. We've got, who else? Suster probably, Brett, Larks, Podwis. All these people, they use palisades a lot to control something in some way or form. So palisades, big plus. They don't go over here with the forest. Forests are like okay. They go up this end at the top being like needed. By the way, Weirwoods and Court's Pile go like just under the level of needed. Very important against skew lists, but not quite as good as palisades can be. So that's palisades. Low walls. Low walls are like palisades, but low. No, low walls are fine. They're not especially strong. The removing the +1 armor comes into the same as the forest, so they get that. The removing the rerolls is good. I find that something like a low wall like this, and now that TTS has been fixed, I can show you the low wall like this. This is actually kind of like more important. So I'll just put it here for an example, right? Something like this is actually quite annoying because if I lock all that in place, you'll see that if I go for an infantry unit there, I can control the objective, and I'm deliberately want to put it so you can actually see the objective through the tray. You can control the objectives slightly and still have the wall at the front of your unit. So here you go. So the wall objective's fully controlled, and now if anything charges me, I get +1 to my reroll, my armor, and they lose any rerolls. And all of a sudden, this unit in the middle objective just, got a lot more defensive for basically free. You add into the fact that your opponent's probably put some court spars down, or maybe they're an idiot and put some weirwoods down, and you just got a free bron. You got to the objective first. All of a sudden, you're a lot harder to remove. This is where people struggle against things like Queensmen and stuff, because Queensmen, if they're ever able to adopt this kind of position, they're kind of laughing. They're very hard to remove in this kind of position. You can achieve something similar with a different shaped wall, but I'll just show you the reason this one's so useful is if you move to the side, you will get corner coverage as well. So now anything charging the front and also this flank here is useful, and you can get that anywhere along here, right? Similarly, anywhere along here. You do sometimes see it with the low wall like this. I'll just get another objective quickly, show it like this. You see this quite commonly on TTS, and it's the similar kind of thing is now achieved, where I can go here, and I control the objective, and more importantly, have the inch retreat, and still control the objective. And in order to charge across me, you'd be going across my central spline in any way, shape, or form, so you take the low wall there. The problem with these, of course, is you aren't protected on the flanks. So if anything comes in over here, it avoids that, which means that you're a bit more subject to open flanks, but if you're going to put units on the flanks to support, then you're fine. That's very popular to do with central objectives. You see that a lot on TTS and from decent players going for this kind of play in the middle. Also, a wall on the side here breaks up the kind of like issue of these two units facing off. You sometimes see this in games where two people will be happy and content to control an objective each, and this actually is playing into one person's hands, not the other. Now, I can't tell you which person's hands it plays into yet, because it depends on the game, but essentially what you're saying is, we're just going to stand here all game, assuming not range units. We're not going to engage each other. We're just going to stand here controlling the point and shuffle a bit and get a better position here and there, but maybe we're not going to engage. This benefits one of the two players because basically this now doesn't do anything, right? Both players are content with this, and actually what ends up controlling the game and deciding the game is what happens over here, right? And you've got the remaining units on both sides over here battling it off. The problem being is if, let's say, red is now losing, is behind, so maybe he's dropped a unit, has these things now pushing in, there's been a bit of a mess. Let's say this is something like what's happening over here. Again, not really what the game looks like in general, but it gives you a rough picture of what can happen. Again, these could be cavalry units and stuff as well. But let's say something like this is happening. Red's losing, and then red goes, oh crap, I'm going to have to come across and charge. But as we've decided, this is actually really bad, so they end up having to take a risky option that then maybe doesn't pay off for them, and if you've positioned carefully, you just go, cool, so I'll retreat an inch. And I still can control the objective, and you still got the wall to charge across, and yeah, you can control the pace of the game there very well. And again, ruin your opponent. Like, you take away your chances of the red player, in this instance, really coming back into the game on the flank side of the board. You do that, place that terrain down if you feel comfortable, thinking, I think I'm happy with my unit set on this objective scoring points. Maybe it's a Stormcrow Merc unit, I don't know, something just small. Stormcrow Merc with Davos, for example. It's just going to sit on that objective and control it. My opponent has Poor Fellows Champion of Faith, or something, Poor Fellows Lone Lannister Guardsman. This is exactly the kind of thing you want. You're going to win the game on the rest of the board, and your opponent is then going to go, crap, I have to get this unit involved, and it can't. You sideline the unit, and it goes back to the conversations we had about deployment a couple of weeks ago. So walls and stuff like that, very handy there. I wouldn't typically look at walls other places, but they can come in handy if you want to put a wall like to split the game up, like here in a 3 objective, making it harder to move across, like this. Similarly here, the other way, meaning that people take more impact from that. But low wall, I am going to put roughly in the same category as Court Spars and Weirwoods. I like these things in lists. Yeah, I like these picks. Bogs. Now, bogs are really good. Removing rerolls, removing -1 from the move makes charging so much more unpalatable and so much harder. I'm a big fan of bogs, as people probably know with my free folk. The traps and the bogs and your grit mean, you know, my movement stat of 4 has been reduced to movement 2, and then I have to spend an inch travelling through the bog, so I'm travelling a march of 3 inches. Ooh, this is great fun. I have literally seen Champions of the Stag move 2 inches on a bog into then a 3-inch march. A 5-inch double maneuver followed by march, basically, from Champions of the Stag is the funniest thing in the world to see. Datalink says bogs are your top choice. I agree. I'm putting bogs up here along with Palisades in terms of the level of control they offer. If you're running the right kind of list, bogs are dumb level insane good. That being said, if you're not running those kinds of lists, they're bad. The other thing I like about bogs is they're a big terrain piece, same size as the forest in most of your starter boxes, and they're big, and that means things like Howland and the area that they exert in some dimensions, such as this way, is much larger on the board in terms of what they keep free and what they take up. Yeah, big fan of bogs in general. Yeah, used very similar to walls, to be honest. Very, very similar to walls, but you don't want to give your opponent the +1 armor if you ever need to get charge across, and you have ways of removing the rerolls or ways where you can give yourself rerolls anyway. So, yeah. Gypsy then says, yes, Dance with Dragons. Bogs have a unique situation in Dance with Dragons. Dance with Dragons sets your movement speed to 2. Bogs. Oh, they also mean you can't march. Bogs take an inch to move through. Go figure. An objective in a bog like so. Someone picks that up, and I am not joking when I say this. They have made their unit do nothing for the rest of the game, right? If they pick this up, a lot of newbies might do this. They pick this up with an 8-point unit. Let's say they picked it up in round 2. Round 3, they move an inch. Round 4, they move another inch. Round 5, they move another inch. And move 6, they've moved a 4th inch. If they try and stay on the bog, they legitimately will never get out. Right? Their best opportunity, and it seems dumb as all hell, is the hope that you have a unit here. And this seems really dumb. And then they go, cool, back to front. I'll take on a 6 charge. I'll take on a 5+, 6+ charge. Because expensive units typically have good morale. They can't afford this unit to be sat there doing nothing all game. They should just take on the charge in the hope of getting out the bog. Because even if they fail, they moved further. When your movement is 2, and the minimum you can roll on a dice is 1, the minimum distance you can travel on a charge is 2 inches. Which is more than a bog than your maneuver for 1 inch would be. So you will always be gaining movement, and you'll always be gaining movement in a direction you kind of want to go in, generally speaking, which is towards the enemy if you're an expensive unit. That being said, of course, you run the risk of dropping the token, other things like that, but it is what it is. You need to get engaged sometimes, and yeah, it's very easy to put a unit like that on the flat, like over there, and you started with, say, like a cavalry unit here, and then you end up swinging this over to the side, and you end up beating the rest of his list here, and this unit's just over here being like, guys, we can't help. And you can't even voluntarily drop it in dance. Rip that unit. Rip the game. So yeah, just be wary of that. Bogs, numero uno pick. You've got synergy with weaken tokens, synergy with disrupt, and anything that likes stuff that doesn't reroll against it. If you've got squishy units, you want to remove your opponent's rerolls. Where like a 5+ armor, going to a 4+ is not that great. It's okay with a fortified, but I'd much rather them have no rerolls and have to maybe fail the charge. Whereas if you're 6+ armor, the fortified taking to 5+, especially if you've got sundering, kind of pointless. So the bog is much more efficient in that sense. Big fan of bogs. I don't really know what else to say about them. Used a lot. Put them on the middle objective. Remove rerolls. Get your set for charge units in there. Laugh as opponents really struggle to remove you. That kind of thing. Bogs A tier along with Palisades. Big A tier for me. Movement is how you win. Rank and flank games, you probably heard me say this before. Anything that controls movement effectively and in the right way is a way of winning. Hence the reason I put Palisades at the top, but it's why I don't put Weirwoods and Corpse Piles as highly, because they don't control movement in the same way. Stakes are an odd one. Stakes, I'm actually going to put like distinctly B tier, kind of like along with everything else. The only real C tier, like don't pick, is Hedges. Everything else is like pickable. And then Weirwoods and Palisades and Bogs are extremely good terrain pieces in the meta at the moment and are very strong. That doesn't mean you should look to pick these two over these. This is actually the point. But your lists will tell you what you want to be picking. Your list will tell you how you should be using these things. But these things have a higher level of control and ability to use them. Whereas these things don't have a high, what you might call a high cap, or the possibilities of using these effectively is more limited than the possibility of using this. That being said, we'll talk about stakes and then we'll wrap up. Stakes are good. The D3+1 is nice, but that's all they really come with, apart from being destructible. The D3+1 is handy. I'm really not a big fan of stakes, to be honest. I don't use them much myself. I don't have factions that benefit a lot from them. Or play factions that benefit a lot from them. And there are very few things that really want these, to be honest. You can try and do it with self-damage kind of effects and kind of bait people into charging them and things like with Taunt. But to be honest, like all that stuff is a bit memey, really. It's kind of spottable from a long way away. You can just not position within 6 inches, not give your opponent that side of the board. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of stakes. Where stakes are a lot more applicable and were a lot more palatable, usually come in Starks and to some extent Targaryens, and that's with small solos. Protect Jorah behind there. I don't really want to take D3+ wounds, just going to kill Jorah, and then the Surge 4th. It's just not nice. Still gets to achieve his thing and he can dance around if he needs to. Ghost and wolves and ghost and chariots can walk up with it within the 6 and then destroy, clearing the way for something else to come through. Is possibility. Taunt OP says Evan. Yeah, Taunt OP. Yeah, Taunt's fine. It's just like stake taunt combo is like so obvious because your opponent's picked a list with taunt and has deployed a thing of stakes on the board. Like, if you can't see that one coming like a billion miles off, then you deserve to fall for that one. I know there's not a huge amount you can do it with a situation like this, but if you feel like you're gonna get taunted, just do that. Like, not even joking. What they're gonna do? Come over here and go, I activate my unit, and you go, I'll taunt. I can't see you, so you can't do anything. Oh, yeah, you're right. I'll charge you in the flank, and then take the D3+1 for the stakes and everything. All right, so I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll destroy the stakes, and I go, cool. My activation. Anyway, we're talking about your taunt stake combo thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry I've done this to you. So yeah, I would just do this, and people would think, "Wow, you're insane! You shouldn't give your flank of a unit." Yeah, I'm willing to do that if I don't think I'm going to get 2-shot, and I think that the stake damage is going to do enough damage to my opponent that it's going to be not worth the risk. Then yeah, I'm fine with that. That being said, solos do clear up stakes quite useful, and you've always got the old classic, and I'll pull him out for this exact example, and you only get one example here from today's episode of a particular thing. And yes, those of you who can read probably saw that I just loaded up Night's Watch. If you can guess what's going to happen now, you would be right. Spawned Night's Watch. The Cold Hands. What shall I do today? I don't know, Cold Hands. What could we do today? Now's Watch has ended on this unit, say. Now's Watch has ended over here. Ah, well, I guess we'll have to go for a walk. Maneuver. Oh, damn, we forgot our purse. Maneuver again. That's a minimum of 4 wounds with 2d3s plus 2. So, yeah, that's dead cold hands. Now's Watch has ended. Bleh. Now's Watch has ended. Bleh. And what happens next turn? Ah, we found the handbag, guys. We're fine. For a gambit of 1 VP, you too can have the North Remembers. Sorry, Now's Watch has ended from 1.6 all the way back again. And you didn't even lose some of your activations to do it. Ah, didn't we love Starks running across stakes? That was the days. So yeah, stakes, decent, certainly something to think about. But again, only really if your list is going to like them, want them. I would not recommend stakes in a lot of situations. One thing that is a kind of plus is that if you feel like you've got cavalry and you want to charge aggressively, you can put cavalry here and be willing to just go, I'm going to take the stakes, but all I want is my lance cavalry to not get charged. If you're happy with that, and you're happy to just take 5 for moving through, or take 0 for moving to here, then charging through the stakes, say to a unit here, you're going to charge through the stakes, taking the D3 plus 1 but aligning here, and you go, that's fine for my lance cav, I'm not dropping ranks or anything like that, I'm still just as effective, then by all means do that. The point is, like, a good player will just go, fine then, do that. And you'll go, shit, I'll do my free maneuver, then I'll charge, and now I'm stuck on that, and if I don't kill you, then I'm just going to keep taking damage. If I search forth off the stakes, I'm just going to keep taking damage, and then your expensive cavalry unit's taking wounds where it needs to not take wounds. Because it's an expensive cavalry unit, and they, generally speaking, are a lot more defensive, and they are a lot kind of more effective at keeping their wounds alive. So yeah, that's just something to be aware of and just something to think about. Yeah. So that's my one-on-one on terrain. I haven't given a huge amount about placing it. When we do some stuff later on in the kind of like series here, when you get to see some games played out, or like prelim games and stuff like this, we'll talk a lot about terrain and deployment within 2 list format and how it works, and talking about where we think a game gets played out. Some more stuff coming to you with that. Just at the moment, thinking about the way we play the game. So yeah, data, all B tier are situationally the best pieces. A tier is default. A tier is default the best for average situation. Yes, data, generally speaking. So these in at B, all playable pieces of terrain. This not for the cover rule really. These strong pieces I fully advise you get used to seeing and playing a lot more if you don't already. Don't spam these 2 guys. It really isn't effective. Good level play. You still see people do it. That doesn't mean it's not good, but it's not effective to see this. And if your local communities constantly see this, get them to branch out, play some random terrain with the intent, or make them pick terrain, but make them have to not pick Weirwood and Corpse Pile as one of their 2. Like, actually do that. Make them having to pick different terrain. You can pick anything you want, but you only have 1 Corpse Pile or 1 Weirwood. Make them start picking the other stuff, realizing how it works, how it's used, how it can be used. That being said, you know, Carlo was here, he'd be like, most of this terrain's crap, I only use these things. He's not wrong. You know, most of the stuff that Carlo plays only uses a few pieces of terrain, but I'm a big fan of knowing when the right time to use the other terrain pieces is, and there are right times to use the other terrain, so just bear that one in mind. Cool. Well, that is the end of today's episode. Just a short one on terrain. Remember, I'll remind you again, your mileage may vary. Just don't listen to anything I say ever. Okay? Yeah. That is kind of where we'll leave off. Ross says, new tournament idea, 1 Weirwood, 1 Corpse Pile. Yeah, why not? You know, maximum 1 Weirwood, 1 Corpse Pile. So that leads us into tournaments. We've obviously spoken briefly about the new tournament coming up in the near future in Poland for the team event. Willie also got on to me about Captain Con. Captain Con was run this weekend, and unfortunately they had like ridiculously cold weather. It's minus 30 degrees on Saturday, which is super cold. A lot of people didn't want to come out. But they did have end up having 20 players across the 3 events, 20 different players across New England coming to the event. Some people coming as far as Philly to Captain Con for the event there, which is fantastic to see, fantastic to hear. A couple of pictures that he sent me as well. People playing the game, enjoying themselves. Look at that. Gotta love it. And 20 players for a US tournament is, a good size. That's a very good size for US events. So well done to Captain Con there. The 30-point event was won by a neutral. Love it. The Friday for 30-point event. And the Saturday and Sunday were won both by the local Stark player who swept up. He also has he quotes Carlo's favourite bases with lots of height on. Free folk literally scaling the walls. You can see there. Gotta love stuff like this. Whoa. That's impressive. I like the way he's done those. I can't say the basing is my like favorite thing in the world, but I quite like the mountain ice glacier thing he's gone for. I think you could do some really lovely things and pieces with the effect he's got there. So yeah, nice. I like that. If anyone hasn't seen these guys, you'll notice these guys are the new Frozen Shore ballistic missiles. Sorry, Frozen Shore hunters, fully painted up there in all their glory. If you haven't seen those guys yet. So yeah, cool, awesome. Good stuff from Captain Con. Brilliant to see. We have got other tournaments coming up. We're going to stop by some current tournaments next week probably as well. But we've got an event happening in Poland in what is Wilska Arena. Whoops. I just totally removed my background. That was clever. That was very clever. I didn't even know that was unlocked. So we've got an event happening in Wilska Arena in Warsaw, Poland. We've got an event happening. Winter War is coming in Helsinki, Finland this weekend as well. We have Weekend at Krasters, another event happening in Sweden this weekend. The Sommerfire Spieltreff im Outer Rim in Tuttlingen in Germany. Ooh. Not seen anything over there in Outer Rim. Maybe a new German community. We also have Great Escape Games in Sacramento, California. Those guys in Sacramento, California have been playing a lot of events recently and getting a lot of games in. So, hey, love it to see it. Another event happening in Vanaheim in Krakow, Poland again. It's Chelmsford Bunkers Clash of Members happening. This is Season 2's February event happening, strange enough, in February. Looking at getting potentially 34 players in Rittle Village Green. Wow, in Chelmsford. I really hope that one goes well. Yes. Goblin Trader running there another event in Barcelona, Spain this year, this month, coming up this weekend as well. Another event in Cuenca? I have no idea. Sorry. House Siege looking to Cuenca in Spain as well. Small event there. An event happening in a largish event looking like potentially up to 50 players on the 11th and 12th of February in Montalvano in PE, Italia. I'm sorry, guys, that's beyond my Italian knowledge. But yeah, awesome. That's amazing. Montesilvano, maybe. Montesilvano, maybe. Oh wow, nice. And it's one of the part of the Italian major tournament series as well. Fantastic to see happening here near Pescara. Okay, cool. In Italy. There we go, if anyone was wondering. There we go there. Awesome stuff. Another event happening in Chattanooga. Yes, Chattanooga event is happening this weekend. They've got a lot of hype going. I believe they were up to something like 20 people when I last heard about it. I think they've got, so 17 already on stats, which is fantastic to see. A couple of familiar faces on there. Lucas is going along. Brand the Bodybuilder. We've had him talk about him before briefly. Unky Beard, another classic on the Sunday Slaughter. So yeah, cool, awesome, absolutely fantastic to see that Chattanooga event come along. I think Derek is running that, so if you want to go along, get in contact with Derek Sheets. We've also got an event happening in Fresno, in Clovis, California. Happening this weekend as well, small event there. And an event happening in Shanghai Fight Club back in Shanghai, China, for this month as well. An event happening in Russia, in Kazan. The Kazan guys have been putting on lots of little events. It's great to see. A Valencia event happening in February as well in Spain. Spain keep absolutely smashing it out of the park. Quartermasters at War, which doesn't have much information, but I'm getting it's a local tournament. Yeah, be a local tournament in, oh, that's not a language I am familiar with. It is indeed Magyar Khan and some of the guys there in the Netherlands. Cool. It was asking some questions about setting up events, so that'll be that one. I think that's it for this week. We also have a league starting up next week, but we'll talk about that one later on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 events spanning multiple countries, something like nearly 10 countries there, which is fantastic to see yet again, guys. Absolute pleasure to see people playing. Really hope you enjoy your weekends, really enjoy all the games you get in. I've managed 2.5 hours of talking to myself. I clearly am losing the plot, and I will see you all next week. Have a good one.
Ready? Aim!
There's too many!
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby!